Chapter 3468. Chapter 3463. Chapter 3463 Manbao Plaza. After a while, everyone had calmed down. Duamulu looked at Nyetian and asked, "Teacher, where are we going next?" They had just arrived at the 7th cultivator of true cultivators and knew nothing about this place, so they couldn't help but panic. Nyetian squinted his eyes and looked around. As far as the eye could see, it was actually a boundless mountain range. He had wanted to find a city and inquire about some things, but now it seemed that it was not as easy as he had imagined. It was at this moment Lian Jiofeng suddenly looked at Nyetian and said cold, "Nyetian, return the heart-devouring blackstone to me." Nyetian was surprised. He frowned and laughed. "Lian Jiofeng, what do you mean?" "Nyetian, since we've already come to the Saint's world, there's no need for you to look for the Underworld Emperor. We can look for him ourselves," Chisha said cold as he looked at Nyetian. "You guys are afraid that if I bring them along, I'll drag you guys down, right?" Nyetian glanced at 7 kills and immediately responded with a faint smile. In the past, Chisha had been very hostile towards Duanmu and the others. Now that they had just arrived in the Saint's world, he wanted to part ways with Nyetian and the others. Clearly, he was worried that Nyetian would drag him down with foreburdens. "The two of you are far too unreasonable. Teacher has only just brought you to the Saint's world, yet you're already leaving?" Duanmu could not stand it any longer, so he said coldly, "Umph." Chisha sneered. He completely ignored Duanmu and directly said to Nyetian, "Nyetian, give us the heart-devouring Blackrock. You've already done us a favor by bringing us to the Saint's world." "You." Duanmu frowned. He wanted to say something, but was stopped by Nyetian. "Here's the heart-devourer Blackstone. Good luck." Nyetian smiled faintly. He took out the heart-devourer Blackstone and handed it to 7 kills. Since these two fellows were unwilling to go the same way as him, why should he force them? As for the Emperor of the Underworld, even without the heart-devouring Black Stone, Nyetian could still find him. "Nyetian, goodbye." Chisha took the heart-devouring Black Stone and sneered. He turned around and left. "Nyetian, good luck." Lian Jiofeng swept his gaze across Duanmu and the others. He smiled wickedly and left. The two figures were like flowing lights, quickly disappearing into the horizon. "Two ingrates." Duanmu frowned and cursed unwillingly. "There's no need to bother with them." Nyetian smiled faintly and didn't say anything else. Lian Jiofeng and 7 kills departure actually made him feel a lot more relaxed. He wasn't counting on these two to find the Emperor of the Underworld. Moreover, before Lian Jiofeng and 7 kills left, Nyetian had already engraved their consciousness imprints into the 4 God Soul Stones. With his current senses, he would be able to sense Lian Jiofeng and 7 kills if they appeared within 5,000 kilometers of him. At this moment, he had a premonition that perhaps it wouldn't be long before he would meet these two fellows. "Teacher, what do we do?" Duanmu looked at Nyetian with a troubled expression after he calmed down a little. "There are mountains all around us. Let's just pick a random direction and find the others first." Nyetian smiled bitterly. He didn't know what to do next, so he could only walk aimlessly for now. Following that, the 5 of them randomly chose a direction and dashed away. About 3 days later, they finally walked out of the endless mountain range. By this time, the 5 of them were exhausted. At this moment, even Nyetian felt a bit exhausted. Even he found it a little difficult to walk such a long distance. Meanwhile, Duanmu and the others were already panting heavily. Their bodies swayed as if they were about to fall. They were only able to last until now because of Nyetian's help. Nyetian didn't let them enter the 9 extreme mountains. This kind of long journey could be considered a kind of cultivation. It was only now that Nyetian truly understood just how vast the sacred world was. "Teacher, look, there's a city up ahead." Yang Zixiao seemed to notice something and pointed ahead. Nyetian's eyes focused. He looked in the direction Yang Zixiao was pointing and saw a majestic city. The city looked extremely huge. It was larger than any city Nyetian had seen in the realm. His initial estimates put the city at more than 5,000 kilometers in diameter. Such a large city was almost the size of a small realm. Let's go over quickly, Han Tian said impatiently. Okay, Nye Tian nodded. The wings of the astral soul on his back spread open. He brought Duanmu Lu and the others with him and flew toward the city like a giant bird. Half a day later, Nye Tian and the others arrived in the sky outside the city. At this time, they could truly feel the vastness of the city. The city wall stretched outside the city. It was 10,000 meters tall and several hundred meters thick. The entire city was enveloped in a huge formation. It looked extremely sturdy, like a huge fortress. What a magnificent city! Nye Tian couldn't help but exclaim, his eyes flickering. It was hard to imagine how much manpower was needed to build such a city. Everything in the sacred world was more terrifying than Nye Tian had imagined. Then, the five of them landed and walked toward the city gate. The city gate was extremely majestic. It was like a huge mountain wall. There were two huge statues outside the city gate. They were two people, each holding something in their hands. They were exchanging something. Million Treasures Mall. Nye Tian raised his head and looked at the top of the city gate. He was stunned when he saw the words engraved on it. Million Treasures Mall. What did that mean? It seemed like the city was a place for trading. No wonder the two statues at the city gate seemed to be exchanging something. The Million Treasures Chamber of Commerce. I didn't expect it to be so prosperous after so many years, the Ghost Emperor suddenly said with a chuckle. Ghost Emperor, do you know what this city is for? Nye Tian asked after being stunned for a moment. The Million Treasures Mall is opened by the Million Treasures Chamber of Commerce. It is one of the two largest chambers of commerce in the all-heaven sacred world. I was once a guest elder of the Million Treasures Chamber of Commerce for a period of time. The Ghost Emperor smiled faintly and said, Let's go into the city first. If we're lucky, there might be a big auction and we might even find a good fate chant. Yes. Nye Tian's eyes lit up when he heard the word life incantation. It had been a few days since he awakened his fate meridian. If he still couldn't find a suitable fate chant, he would miss the best time to fuse his fate chant. Nye Tian quickened his pace and soon arrived at the city gate. Get out of the way. However, a crisp voice suddenly rang out in the air. It was sharp and carried a hint of nervousness. Eyebrows furrowed. Nye Tian jerked his head up and saw a huge crimson bird flying towards the city gate. On the crimson bird stood a girl in red. Her facial features were exquisite and beautiful. However, her pretty face was tense, and she seemed to be panicking. Chapter 3469. Chapter 3464. Battle the unreasonable girl. Get out of the way. Get out of the way. The red-robed girl screamed from the top of the crimson bird. Nye Tian's eyes narrowed as he frowned. Then he stomped the ground and shot up into the sky. Oh, at that moment, the huge crimson bird seemed to be startled. It abruptly turned around and fixed its blazing eyes on Nye Tian. With a strange cry, it spat out a fireball from its beak, which shot towards Nye Tian like a fiery dragon. Nye Tian's face darkened. The starlight heaven slash appeared in his hand, and he waved it in the air. A wave of sword chi gushed towards the fireball and dispersed it. But at this moment, the crimson giant bird seemed to have gone mad. Its whole body released terrifying flames, like a divine phoenix in a raging inferno. Its wings suddenly flapped, and it actually crashed straight into a giant statue outside the city gate. Not good. Seeing this, Nye Tian's face suddenly darkened, and he had a bad feeling. The giant statue was protected by a powerful formation. If the crimson bird charged towards it, it would definitely trigger the formation's killing intent. The crimson bird would not be able to defend against a formation of that level. It would definitely be killed by the formation. In an instant, Nye Tian made a decision. A pair of astral soul wings appeared on his back. Like a ray of light, he flew towards the crimson bird. Seeing Nye Tian rushing over, the red-clothed girl's beautiful eyes trembled, and she couldn't help but cry out in alarm. At this moment, Nye Tian flew over her head and stretched out his hand. A powerful yet gentle force pulled her down from the crimson bird. The red-robed girl screamed. It was obvious that she was shocked. Boom! In the next moment, the giant scarlet bird charged straight towards the giant statue. Before it even touched the statue, it triggered the killing intent of the array formation. A huge array force surged out like a rolling wave, violently bombarding out. The giant scarlet red bird didn't even have the time to let out a final shriek before it was killed by the power of the formation, leaving nothing behind. Boom! Immediately afterwards, the raging power of the spell formation rumbled towards Nietion and the red-robed girl. Nietion frowned. A crimson light gushed out from his body and enveloped the red-robed girl, forming a shield around her. This was his ultimate fire scarlet heaven armor. He used it to protect the red-robed girl. Then, Nietion retreated a few hundred meters in the air. But he was too late. Bang! In the blink of an eye, the raging power of the spell formation pressed down like a huge wave. A muffled sound rang out in the void, and Nietion's figure was directly sent flying, leaving a bloody trail in the air. Teacher, when Duanmu Lu and the others saw this scene, they finally reacted and exclaimed in unison. Nietion's figure stabilized in the air. There were a few wounds on his body that were so deep that his bones could be seen. Fresh blood gushed out and dyed his body red. He frowned. The 9 dragon veins in his body circulated rapidly, and his wounds gradually healed. After a long time, the wounds on his body finally healed, but his face was still pale. Nietion furrowed his brows as he looked down at the giant statue with a gloomy expression. It was too dangerous. If he had acted a little later, the red-robed girl and the crimson bird would have died under the force of the formation. The protective formation around the giant statue was too strong. Luckily, his martial body was strong. Otherwise, he would have been killed by the force of the formation. Xiaohua. At that moment, the red-robed girl who had been a daze for a long time finally reacted and burst into tears. Xiaohua was the crimson bird from before. The girl and Xiaohua had a good relationship. Xiaohua's death had almost caused her to break down. Nietion looked at the red-robed girl and frowned. He didn't say anything. At that moment, Duanmu Lu and the others came over and looked at Nietion nervously. "Master, are you okay?" "I'm fine." Nietion smiled faintly. His complexion had improved a lot. "Nietion, do you know how dangerous it was just now?" At that moment, the Ghost Emperor's voice suddenly sounded. That formation was a rank 3 sacred formation. The power it released in an instant was enough to kill a heavenly mandate realm 9th tier Saint Master. So strong. Nietion frowned. He still had some lingering fear. "Luckily, you have 9 life veins. Otherwise, you would have been dead," the Ghost Emperor said coldly. Apparently, he was complaining that Nietion shouldn't have saved him so easily. "Fortunately, I'm fine." Nietion smiled bitterly and let out a long breath. He just felt the terrifying impact of the array force. Fortunately, he was far away and had reacted in time. With the support of the 9 life meridians, his martial body was much stronger. Only then did he manage to save his life. "You bastard, you kill my Xiaohua. Give me back my Xiaohua." At that moment, the red-robed girl suddenly looked at Nietion. Her eyes were full of tears as she shouted. Nietion frowned, and his face darkened. He had saved the girl, but she didn't thank him. Instead, she blamed him for the death of the crimson bird. How unreasonable. "You're so unreasonable." Without waiting for Nietion to speak, Han Tian, who was at the side, couldn't bear to watch any longer. With a cold glint in his eyes, he stared at the red-clothed girl and said, "Teacher saved you just now. It's fine if you don't thank him, but you're blaming him." "I didn't need him to save me," the red-robed girl shouted, tears streaming down her face. "He was the one who meddled in other people's business. Let's go." Nietion looked at the red-robed girl, but didn't say anything else. He turned and prepared to leave. The red-robed girl looked like she was in her teens. She was still a child, so there was no need to lower herself to her level. Although she was young, she was very strong. She was already a peak paramount god. Actually, that wasn't a big deal. After all, she was a warrior from the Holy World. Furthermore, the Crimson Bird was no ordinary flying beast. It was enough to show that the red-robed girl was no ordinary person. You? The red-robed girl roared when she saw that Niet Tian was ignoring her, but she didn't know what to say. Who dares barge into Myriad Treasures Mall? At this moment, a thunderous roar rang out from the city. Two silhouettes rushed out like two wild beasts, causing the surrounding space to tremble. Brat, you're courting death by barging into Myriad Treasures Mall. Upon seeing Niet Tian, the two figures simultaneously let out fierce roars and unleashed their auras as they simultaneously launched attacks. Two terrifying palm shadows shot out towards Niet Tian with a loud rumble. Niet Tian frowned, and his expression flickered. The two men were wearing heavy armor. Clearly, they were the guards of Myriad Treasures Mall. They had obviously been alarmed by the commotion just now and thought that Niet Tian was trespassing. The two guards were third-level Heavenly Rhythm Holy Disciples. As soon as they saw Niet Tian, they didn't say a word and attacked with all their strength. Clearly, they wanted to kill Niet Tian. Teacher, be careful. Duanmu Lu and the rest's expressions suddenly changed as they cried out in unison. Chapter 3470. Chapter 3465. Battle an inexplicable guard boom. Niet Tian's body trembled and a surge of sword aura surged. The sword intent that erupted was like a volcanic eruption, violent and violent. Boom! In the next moment, Niet Tian struck out with his sword. A huge sword shadow rushed out like a mad dragon, causing the surrounding void to tremble. Kaboom! Then, the sword shadow descended. Not only did it block the two palm shadows, but it also knocked the two guards back 100 meters. The two guards steadied themselves and looked at Niet Tian in astonishment. They did not expect Niet Tian to be so powerful. Niet Tian looked very young, but he was already at the Heavenly Rhythm realm. His talent in martial arts was beyond imagination. At this moment, Niet Tian looked at the two guards with a gloomy expression and did not say a word. Young man, who are you? Why did you break into the Million Treasure Mall? At this moment, the two guards had obviously calmed down. One of them looked at Niet Tianling and asked coldly, but there was a hint of fear in his eyes. Previously, they thought that Niet Tian was just an ant. However, the powerful combat strength that Niet Tian displayed just now made them look at Niet Tian in a different light. For such a young martial artist to have such strength, there was a high possibility that he was a disciple of a famous family. Although the Million Treasure Mall was not afraid of any famous families, it was better not to provoke these young masters with some background. The one who broke into the Million Treasure Mall is not him. It's me. At this time, before Niet Tian could speak, the girl in red directly spoke. Her expression was much calmer, and she actually had a very arrogant attitude. She looked at the two guards and said, "Is there a problem? Whose family are you from? Why are you so arrogant?" The two guards looked at the girl in red and were stunned for a moment. Then, one of them sneered and asked, "My surname is Ning." The girl in red frowned and took out a token. She flashed it in front of the two guards and put it away. "Yes, it's young miss." The two guards were stunned for a moment before their expressions changed. They seemed to be very panicked and immediately bowed. They no longer had the arrogance from before and were now very respectful. They quickly said, "We have eyes but failed to see. We didn't know that the young miss had arrived. It's fine as long as you know who I am." The girl in red waved her hand and said, "It was just an accident. It's all right now. Let's go into the city." Of course, of course." One of the guards repeatedly agreed and said with a flattering expression, "Eldest miss is here for the auction, right? This lowly one will personally escort eldest miss to the auction." "No need." The girl in red had a cold expression on her face. She turned to look at Niet Tian and said, "It's enough for him to protect me." The two guards froze for a moment and looked suspiciously at Niet Tian. Only then did they realize that Niet Tian was their young Mrs. Guard. No wonder Niet Tian was so powerful at such a young age. He had a relationship with the young miss of the Million Treasure Merchant Guild. The Million Treasure Merchant Guild was one of the two largest merchant guilds in the universe. They had abundant resources. As the guard of the young miss, Niet Tian must have consumed a lot of cultivation resources. Nye Tian frowned after hearing the girl in red's words. This girl was not polite at all. She directly treated him as her guard. The red-robed girl looked at Nye Tian and said, "You've done well just now. I'll reward you handsomely in a moment." Nye Tian, temporarily becoming this girl's guard is not bad. Nye Tian's expression darkened. He wanted to refuse, but the Ghost Emperor's voice suddenly rang out. "Become her guard?" Nye Tian was taken aback and couldn't help but feel somewhat speechless. He came here to familiarize himself with the sacred world and to find the life chant. He did not come here to be someone's guard. Nye Tian, this girl is a direct descendant of the Million Treasure Ning clan. You won't be at a disadvantage if you follow her. The Ghost Emperor chuckled and said proudly. The Million Treasure Merchant Guild's president's surname was Ning, so they were called the Million Treasure Ning clan. The token that the girl in red took out was the Ning clan's inner token. To be able to have the Ning clan's inner token meant that the girl in red had a high status in the Ning clan. Nye Tian had unintentionally saved the young miss of the Ning clan. This was a great opportunity for him. Nye Tian thought about it and did not say anything. "Boy, be my guard and I will not mistreat you." The girl in red could see that Nye Tian was a little unhappy and said. Nye Tian's lips twitched and he forced a smile. "My name is Ning Ziyu. You can call me Lady Z." Ning Ziyu's brows relaxed and she said with a smile. Nye Tian nodded and did not say anything. Then, Ning Ziyu brought Nye Tian and the rest into the Million Treasure Mall. Nye Tian was completely stunned by the scene in front of him after entering the city. On both sides of the extremely wide street, there were huge platforms with a radius of 1,000 meters. Every platform was filled with all kinds of goods. There were all kinds of divine weapons, divine pills, divine formation scrolls, divine herbs, and natural treasures. They were truly street goods. On some of the larger tables, one could even see sacred artifacts. There was a stall owner at the side of each counter, looking after the entire counter. Nye Tian looked at the scene in front of him and could not react for a long time. He did not expect the sacred world to be so lively. Duan Mulu and the rest were even more shocked. They looked at both sides of the street and were speechless for a long time. "Kids from the countryside, have you never seen the world?" Ning Ziyu looked at Nye Tian and the rest and said unhappily, "Ghost Emperor, is there a fate spell that I need here?" Nye Tian ignored Ning Ziyu and asked the Ghost Emperor directly. The Ghost Emperor chuckled. "Nye Tian, life incantations are the most precious things even in the holy world. You won't be able to find them in street stalls. Why don't you let this girl take you to the auction?" There was no way that life incantations could be found in street stalls. "Lady Z, let's go to the auction." Nye Tian nodded and looked at Ning Ziyu. He also wanted to see what the auction in the sacred world was like. "Okay." Ning Ziyu agreed and walked towards the center of the city. "Nye Tian, keep an eye on this girl. I'm afraid someone is going to harm her," the Ghost Emperor suddenly said to Nye Tian with a dark expression. Nye Tian was stunned. He did not know what the Ghost Emperor meant. This girl's flying mount is an extremely rare scarlet feather goose. It's extremely fast and gentle. It's impossible for it to lose control for no reason. The Ghost Emperor said with a dark gaze, "I observed it just now. The reason why the scarlet feather goose suddenly lost control was because someone placed a curse on it." Chapter 3471. Chapter 3466. Chapter 3466. A man in black. Nye Tian's eyes trembled when he heard the Ghost Emperor's words. "Yes." The Ghost Emperor nodded and said, "The person who wants to kill her is most likely someone close to her." Nye Tian's eyebrows furrowed as he realized what the Ghost Emperor meant. Ning Ziyu's scarlet goose suddenly went out of control because it was cursed. The only people who could come into contact with the scarlet goose were people close to her. Therefore, the person who wanted to kill Ning Ziyu was most likely someone close to her. If it wasn't for Nye Tian's timely intervention at the city gate, Ning Ziyu would have been dead. "Little girl, it seems like the young mistress of Wanbao Mall isn't in a good situation," Nye Tian thought to himself as he glanced at Ning Ziyu. However, Ning Ziyu had recovered at this moment. Her face was calm, as if she didn't sense the existence of danger at all. At this moment, Duan Mulu saw Nye Tian's strange expression and couldn't help but ask, "Teacher, what's wrong?" Duanmu, pay attention to the surroundings. Tell me immediately if you sense anything unusual. Nietian nodded and said in a deep voice. Although his divine sense was powerful, it was limited after all. It was always good to have one more person stay alert. Yes. Duanmu nodded and became cautious. After a while, Nietian and the others arrived outside a magnificent building. It looked like a blooming lotus with layers of blooming layers. Moreover, it was emitting a golden light. It was very beautiful. The strangest thing was that those petal-like floors were actually floating in the void, giving off an incomparably mysterious feeling. The entire building was like a palace, extremely grand and gorgeous. Nietian and the others looked at the scene in front of them with trembling eyes. It was obvious that they were extremely shocked. They didn't expect a building to exist in such a way. Moreover, Nietian could clearly feel that the entire building was enveloped by a large formation. It was very sturdy. This is the auction. Let's go in. Ningziyu smiled faintly and walked in. When they arrived at the entrance, Ningziyu flashed a golden token and the guards immediately let them in. What a powerful barrier. In the instant he entered the auction house, Nietian immediately felt a strong spirit formation power. His expression couldn't help but change, and he cried out in his heart. He sensed that under the suppression of the boundary, his strength had dropped to early-stage low god. What kind of barrier is this? How can it be so terrifying? The sudden change caused his expression to change, and he was extremely shocked. The auction of the Million Treasures Chamber of Commerce does not allow any private battles. All the martial artists who enter the auction will have their strength suppressed to below the divine realm. Ningziyu saw Nietian's panic and said with a faint smile, "Below the immortal state?" Nietian was stunned and frowned. His strength seemed to have been suppressed to that of an early-stage low god. "Come with me." Ningziyu paid little attention to Nietian. She seemed very excited and headed straight for the top floor of the auction house. The entire auction house was divided into 7 floors. The higher the floor, the more precious the items were. Ningziyu obviously had no interest in wasting time on the lower floors. She headed straight for the upper floors. "Young miss, you're here." At this moment, a green-robed elder appeared. He came to Ningziyu's side, lowered his voice, and bowed. "You are?" Ningziyu looked at the green-robed elder. She didn't know him and was puzzled. "This old servant is the great deacon of this auction house, Yu Rushui." "Young miss, you can just call me Deacon Yu," the green-robed elder said with a faint smile and a bow. He appeared very respectful. Nietian looked at Yu Rushui and couldn't help but crease his brows. He stared at the latter and suddenly said, "Deacon Yu, how did you know that young miss has arrived?" Ningziyu should have come to Myriad Treasures Mall secretly. How did this person called Yu Rushui know? "That's right, Deacon Yu. How did you know that I've arrived?" Ningziyu frowned and asked the same question. "Ahem." Yu Rushui coughed dryly and seemed a little embarrassed. "Young miss, the guard at the gate of this mall is this old servant's nephew. So was that guard who told you?" Ningziyu reacted and said unhappily, "What a talkative servant." Yes. Yu Rushui's eyes trembled and she nodded repeatedly. "Don't worry, young Mississippi. This old servant didn't tell anyone about your arrival." It was obvious that Ningziyu didn't want others to know that she had come to this auction. "At least you're sensible." Ningziyu's expression relaxed slightly. "We're going to the auction house on the 5th floor. Don't follow us and don't tell anyone about our whereabouts. Do you understand? If you dare reveal my whereabouts, I'll break your old bones." "Don't worry, young Mississippi. This old servant won't tell anyone." Yu Rushui smiled apologetically and nodded. "If there's nothing else, young miss, this old servant will take his leave. Go." Ningziyu waved her hand as if she didn't care at all. She had seen many servants like Yu Rushui who rushed to curry favor, so there was no need to pay attention to them. Nietian looked at Yu Rushui's back and thought to himself, this person shouldn't be the one who harmed Ningziyu. Just now, he had indeed suspected that Yu Rushui was the one who had secretly tried to kill Ningziyu. However, Yu Rushui's behavior had dispelled his suspicions. Yu Shui looked like a smooth and slick person. If he had really done something to Ning Ziyu, he definitely wouldn't have taken the initiative to appear. Moreover, given his status, he didn't seem to have the right to do anything to Ning Ziyu. Let's go. Ning Ziyu didn't know what Nie Tian was thinking. She smiled faintly and walked toward the auction house on the higher floor. A moment later, they arrived at the auction house on the 3rd floor. Ning Ziyu still didn't stop. She wanted to start from the auction house on the 5th floor. She wasn't interested in the auction houses on the lower floors. However, at that moment, Nie Tian suddenly felt a hidden killing intent appear, causing his face to darken. In the next moment, a black-robed figure appeared. It was a somber man with a murderous look on his face. He held a large black saber in his hand and walked straight toward Ning Ziyu. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed when he saw the black-robed man, and he walked over in a flash. In an instant, he stood between the black-robed man and Ning Ziyu. The black-robed man's figure flashed by, and his eyes swept across Nie Tian's body like a venomous wolf's. Nie Tian looked straight at him and didn't avoid his gaze. Everything happened in the blink of an eye. The black-robed man left as if nothing had happened. However, Nie Tian looked at his back with a pair of extremely gloomy eyes. In that instant, he had clearly sensed an extremely strong killing intent from the black-robed man. Chapter 3472. Chapter 3467. Killing, is this enough? Teacher, that guy just now had a strong, killing intent. Duan Malu looked at the man in black and transmitted his voice to Nie Tian. Nie Tian nodded and did not say anything else. He was very sure that the man in black wanted to kill Ning Ziyu. Fortunately, he reacted in time and walked over. Otherwise, Ning Ziyu might have died in the man's hands without knowing it. The man in black was very good at hiding his killing intent, but when he was about to kill someone, the killing intent that burst out could not be concealed. Although the moment just now was very calm, it was a moment of life and death for Ning Ziyu. If it weren't for Nie Tian, this little girl would have died again. Who exactly was this man in black? How dare he assassinate the young mistress of the Myriad Treasure Guild at the auction? How insolent! Nie Tian, what are you guys doing? Ning Ziyu finally reacted and asked when she saw Nie Tian's gloomy expression. She already knew the names of Nie Tian and the others, and she also knew that Nie Tian and Duanmu Lu were master and disciple. She was very curious. How did Nie Tian become the teacher of so many people at such a young age? Nothing. Let's go. Nie Tian smiled faintly and decided to let Ning Ziyu continue to be ignorant. Given Ning Ziyu's current state, it was better not to let her know that someone wanted to kill her. Ning Ziyu agreed and led the way to the auction on the 5th floor. Nie Tian smiled faintly and curled his lips into a strange arc. He thought to himself, "You better not come near us again, or I won't be polite." The man in black did not make a move just now. It was obvious that he was afraid of Nie Tian. Nie Tian did not make a move either, but he had secretly engraved the aura of the man's spiritual body into the 4 spiritual stones. At this moment, he could no longer see the black-clothed man, but he could sense the latter's location through the 4 strange soul stones. After a while, Nie Tian and the others arrived at the auction house on the 5th floor. Ning Ziyu entered a VIP room with ease. They entered the VIP lounge one after another. The view was huge, and they could see the entire auction house on the 5th floor. Nie Tian, don't be nervous. We've already arrived at the auction house under 5th Brother's watch. I'm completely safe now. Seeing that Nie Tian and the others were a little nervous, Ning Ziyu couldn't help but laugh and say. Nie nodded and didn't say anything else. This ignorant little girl thought that she was absolutely safe after entering the auction house. Little did she know that after she entered the auction house, she was in even more danger. However, she had good taste and chose Nie Tian as her bodyguard. Let's see what's being auctioned now. Ning Ziyu smiled relaxedly, her beautiful eyes focused on the huge auction stage. Next, we'll be auctioning a rank 3 divine array scroll. At this moment, an old voice was heard. Then, an old man with white hair and beard walked onto the auction stage and announced loudly, A rank 3 divine array scroll. The crowd below became agitated when they heard the white-haired old man's words. Even in the holy world, divine array scrolls were extremely rare, let alone a rank 3 divine array scroll. One should know that the power released by a rank 3 divine array scroll was enough to kill a heavenly mandate saint. This is a rank 3 sacred array, a spirit concentration scroll. It's especially suitable for martial artists who cultivate mind power. If you cultivate in the spirit concentration array, your mind power will increase at least 10 times faster. The white-haired old man continued to speak loudly. However, his words made the crowd's hearts sink. So, it's a scroll for cultivating mind power. What's the use of that? The crowd was in an uproar. Clearly, they didn't think much of the concentration scroll. Regardless of whether it was in the holy world, the realms, or the unavoidable worlds, warriors who cultivated mind power were always in the minority. Therefore, the market for concentration scrolls was not big. For the vast majority of warriors, concentration scrolls were useless. This was because cultivating mind power was a waste of time, and the improvement of mind power did not directly increase a warrior's combat strength. A strong mind power only enhanced a warrior's perception, or if they cultivated some mind martial techniques, they could launch mind attacks. However, cultivating mind martial techniques was even more time-consuming. Therefore, very few warriors would waste time cultivating mind power. Hurry up and bid. Let's end this quickly. Before the white-haired old man finished speaking, someone below started to jeer. The white-haired old man looked at the people below and couldn't help but shake his head, but he still announced loudly, "The price for this concentration scroll is 100 supreme saint crystals." However, as soon as he finished speaking, the crowd below started to shout, 100 supreme saint crystals. That's too expensive. Why don't you just rob a bank? That's right. Isn't it just a scroll for cultivating mind power? It's useless. Who would spend 100 supreme saint crystals on a concentration scroll? Isn't that an idiot? Everyone looked impatient. They all thought that the white-haired old man had gone crazy. The white-haired old man frowned helplessly. Sure enough, these people didn't know the value of the concentration scroll. Nietian, hurry up and buy this scroll. At this moment, the Ghost Emperor's voice suddenly sounded from the VIP room. He seemed very excited. Really? Nietian frowned. He couldn't help but be stunned. Of course, this is a rank 3 concentration scroll. It will greatly improve your mind power cultivation. The people below are all idiots. They don't know how precious the concentration scroll is. The Ghost Emperor said anxiously. Nietian frowned and nodded slightly. However, he looked embarrassed. He had just arrived in the holy world and could be said to have nothing. He didn't even know what 100 supreme saint crystals meant. Miss Z, is 100 supreme saint crystals very expensive? Nietian's eyes darkened as he looked at Ning Ziyu. Have you only seen holy coins and not saint crystals? Ning Ziyu was stunned for a moment. Then, she smiled helplessly and said, Saint crystals are a big currency. It's normal that you haven't seen them. Let me tell you, 1 low-grade saint crystal is equivalent to 10 low-grade saint crystals. 1 mid-grade saint crystal is equivalent to 10 low-grade saint crystals. 1 high-grade saint crystal is equivalent to 10 mid-grade saint crystals. And 1 supreme saint crystal is equivalent to 10 high-grade saint crystals. So, 100 supreme saint crystals are equivalent to 100,000 low-grade saint crystals, which is equivalent to 1 billion holy coins. At this point, Ning Ziyu raised her brow and said, People like you who have only seen holy coins can't possibly understand the concept of 100 supreme saint crystals. It was obvious that she thought Nietian was poor. I want to buy that scroll, Nietian said with a plain tone, his eyebrows furrowed. What? Ning Ziyu was stunned. She thought she had heard wrong. I want to buy that scroll, Nietian said again. Are you crazy? Ning Ziyu's beautiful eyes trembled as she shouted. Do you know how much 100 supreme saint crystals are? Even if I took out everything you have, I'm afraid you wouldn't be able to gather 1 supreme saint crystal. I don't have any saint crystals. Nietian frowned. He looked straight at Ning Ziyu and asked, "Can I use sword crystals?" "Sword crystals?" Ning Ziyu was stunned. She asked in surprise, "You have sword crystals?" Apparently, she hadn't expected that Nie Tian would have a sword crystal on him. Of course, Nie Tian had sword crystals, and a lot of them. When he left the sword martial sky, Zhong Mingyu asked him to bring a lot of sword crystals. "Are these enough?" Nie Tian took out a space ring. With a thought, dozens of sword crystals appeared and floated in the air. Suddenly, the entire VIP room was filled with a strong sword aura. Chapter 3473. Chapter 3468. Chapter 3468, That's Rich. Ning Ziyu looked at the dozens of sword crystals in front of her, her eyes trembling. She couldn't speak for a long time. Never in her wildest dreams had she imagined that Niet Tian actually possessed so many sword crystals. Most inconceivable to her was that all these sword crystals before her were actually top-grade sword crystals. Like Saint crystals, sword crystals were also divided into low-grade, mid-grade, high-grade, and supreme grade. The only difference was that a low-rank sword crystal could be exchanged for 10 low-rank Saint crystals. In other words, the dozens of sword crystals in Nye Tian's hands were equivalent to hundreds of Saint crystals. Ning Ziyu stared blankly at Nye Tian. She couldn't figure out why he possessed so many top-grade sword crystals when he looked so poor. "Nye Tian, you didn't steal these sword crystals, did you?" After a long time, Ning Ziyu came to her senses and frowned. "Are these sword crystals enough?" Nye Tian frowned and asked in a deep voice, ignoring Ning Ziyu. "Of course." Ning Ziyu nodded and explained the exchange rate between sword crystals and sacred crystals. In the all-heavens sacred world, sword crystals were the same as Saint crystals. They were both currencies that could be used directly. Moreover, sword crystals were often more trusted than Saint crystals. After all, this kind of thing could directly improve a swordsman's sword Dao realm. "Yes." Nye Tian nodded slightly and was about to bid. "Wait." Ning Ziyu called out to him at that moment. Nye Tian frowned and turned to look at Ning Ziyu. Ning Ziyu chuckled and said to Nye Tian in a somewhat mysterious tone, "Wait a minute. Make your bid later." Nye Tian narrowed his eyes. He had no idea what Ning Ziyu was doing. "This little girl is trying to help you save money." The Ghost Emperor laughed helplessly. Nye Tian's face was gloomy, and he did not speak. At this moment, no one in the entire auction hall was bidding. These people don't even know the value of the Spirit Concentration Scroll. The white-clothed old man's expression was very ugly, and he felt very helpless. Since no one was bidding, he still had a chance to lower the price. If it weren't for I's urgent need for Saint crystals, I would never have sold the Soul Focus Scroll. The white-robed old man complained to his heart, but after thinking about it for a moment, he still took the initiative to lower the price, shouting, "Third Order Saint Array Focus Scroll, reduced to 60 top-grade Saint crystals." 60 top-grade Saint crystals. As soon as his voice fell, the crowd went into an uproar. No one had expected the white-robed old man to be so ruthless, practically cutting the price by half. Unfortunately, even though the price of the Soul Focus Scroll was reduced to 60 top-grade Saint crystals, no one was interested in it. Forget it. A group of people who don't know what's good for them. The white-robed old man's face was extremely ugly. He sighed and was about to put away the Soul Concentration Scroll. 60 top-grade Saint crystals was already the lowest price he could afford. If it was any lower, it would really be an insult to this Spirit Concentration Scroll. However, the white-robed old man had failed the auction. Not only did he not get a single cent, but he also had to pay the auction house a certain amount of fees. 60 top-grade Saint crystals. Right at this moment, a sharp voice rang out from one of the VIP rooms, resounding across the entire audience. "Oh!" The white-robed old man's eyes couldn't help but tremble when he heard this voice, like a drowning man suddenly grabbing a life-saving straw. At the last moment, someone actually made a bid. This was a pleasant surprise that he hadn't expected. Moreover, the one who made the bid was a guest from a VIP room who seemed to be very rich. The one who made the bid at this moment was none other than Nye Tian. As soon as Nye Tian's voice fell, the audience burst into laughter. What kind of person is this? He actually spent 60 top-grade St. Crystals to buy a soul cultivation scroll. Is his brain flooded with water? He's from a VIP room. At first glance, you can tell he's from an aristocratic family. He must have money to burn. He's rich, but he's too stupid hot. The crowd rose one after another, looking at Nyetion as if he was an idiot. The real idiots are you all. The white-haired old man frowned and thought to himself. He looked at the crowd with eyes full of contempt. 60 top-grade St. Crystals going once, 60 top-grade St. Crystals going twice, 60 top-grade St. Crystals. At this moment, the auctioneer began to call out. However, at this moment, another voice suddenly rang out. 100 top-grade St. Crystals. From one of the VIP rooms, a low voice rang out, resounding throughout the auction house with a hint of playfulness. Huh? The white-haired old man was stunned for a moment before he reacted. Immediately, the wrinkles on his old face trembled as he smiled widely. What's going on? The crowd below was also stunned. They were so shocked that they couldn't speak. At the same time, in the VIP room, Nyetion frowned with a gloomy expression. He didn't expect that at the last moment, someone would appear to compete with him. What surprised him even more was that there was a familiar aura in another VIP room. Through the 4 Wonder Soul Stones, Nyetion was sure that the cultivator in black who tried to harm Ningxiu just now was in another VIP room. Could it be that the cultivator in black was bidding against Nyetion? Huh, why is someone bidding again? Ningxiu was also stunned for a moment, her brow furrowed. She had asked Nyetion not to bid so that the white-haired old man would take the initiative to lower the price, but she didn't expect that it would attract another bidder. 120 top-grade St. Crystals. At this moment, Nyetion didn't hesitate much and bid again. This time, he directly raised the price to top-grade St. Crystals. Just now, he took out 45 top-grade Sword Crystals, which was equivalent to 450 top-grade St. Crystals, so he didn't panic at all. How generous! Ningxiu looked at Nyetion and said with her small mouth, "He's really rich." The people in the auction house also exclaimed, and they couldn't help but look at VIP Room 5, where Nyetion and the others were. 160 top-grade St. Crystals. However, at this moment, the cultivator in black from VIP Room 8 made another bid, and this time, his bid was even more ferocious than Nyetion's. 200 top-grade St. Crystals. Nyetion frowned, but he didn't hesitate and continued bidding. He had plenty of sword crystals on him, so he didn't care at all. 200 top-grade St. Crystals to buy a soul-focused scroll? Are you crazy? Ningxiu suddenly looked at Nyetion, her beautiful eyes trembling as she shouted in shock. 260 top-grade St. Crystals. However, at this moment, another bid came from VIP Room 8. Nyetion frowned, and his face sank slightly. Nyetion stopped shouting. Ningxiu's beautiful eyes trembled, and she hurriedly said to Nyetion, "If you need a soul-focused scroll, this young lady will ask the deacon just now to help you find one. I guarantee that it will be better than this scroll, and it will definitely be cheaper." Nyetion glanced at Ningxiu, shook his head slightly, and smiled. He didn't expect the young lady of Myriad Treasures Chamber of Commerce to be so stingy. 400 top-grade St. Crystals. Then he calmly said. His faint voice resounded throughout the auction house, but it was like a clap of thunder, surging in everyone's ears. Chapter 3474. A strange auction. The entire auction house was dead silent. It took a long time for everyone to react, but they all stared at VIP Room 5, speechless. A soul-focused scroll had actually raised the price to 400 top-grade St. Crystals. This bidder was simply a madman. On the auction stage, the white-haired old man was stunned for a long time. When he finally reacted, he was so shocked that he couldn't speak. Even he didn't expect that the focus scroll would be offered for 400 top-grade St. Crystals. Nyetion, what are you doing? At the same time, in VIP Room 5, Ningxiu reacted. Her eyes trembled as she shouted at Nyetion. "I have plenty of sword crystals. I don't care about a few dozen." Nyetion smiled faintly, his face calm. When he left the Sky Sword Martial School, Zhong Mingyu gave him 1,000 top-grade sword crystals. He didn't care much about it at that time, but he didn't expect the value of these sword crystals to be so high. The focus scroll only cost 40 top-grade sword crystals. He didn't care much about it. Ning Ziyu's pretty face stiffened, and she was speechless. At this moment, she realized that Niet Tian, who looked like a poor and old-fashioned man, was actually a super rich man. After a while, there was no sound from VIP room 8. Niet Tian successfully won the focus scroll. Soon, someone from the auction house brought the focus scroll over. Niet Tian paid 44 top-grade sword crystals. 40 of them were for the focus scroll, and the other 4 were for the auction house's auction fee. He had to admit that the auction was really shady. They actually took 10% of the auction fee. He really didn't know how terrifying the auction house's profits would be after today's auction. Niet Tian checked the focus scroll, and after confirming that there were no mistakes, he put it away. Then the auction continued. However, Niet Tian wasn't interested in the next few auction items. Ning Ziyu didn't say anything either. She seemed to be waiting for something. "Miss Z, have you heard of the heart-devouring black stone?" At this moment, Niet Tian suddenly looked at Ning Ziyu and couldn't help but ask, "Heart-devouring black stone? What was that? Is it some kind of holy stone?" Ning Ziyu was stunned for a moment, her beautiful eyes twinkling as she asked. "Nothing." Niet Tian smiled faintly and didn't say anything else. After all, Ning Ziyu was just a teenage girl. It was normal for her to not have heard of the heart-devouring blackstone. Niet Tian was just asking casually, "Do you want to buy the heart-devouring blackstone?" Ning Ziyu looked at Niet Tian and said with a smile, "That deacon named Yu Rushue must know." Niet Tian's eyes flickered when he heard Ning Ziyu's words. Yu Rushue was the grand steward of this auction house and had seen countless things in her life. Perhaps she really did know about the heart-devouring blackstone. I need a piece of heart-devouring blackstone." Niet Tian nodded with a smile. He hadn't thought of this earlier. He could directly request to the auction house to buy the heart-devouring blackstone and then use it as a clue to find the person who sold it. Perhaps he would be able to discover something. Following that, Niet Tian and the rest sat on the 5th floor for half a day. When they really didn't see anything they were interested in, they left immediately. They skipped the 6th floor and went to the 7th floor. The auction house on the 7th floor was bigger than the auction house on the 5th floor. However, there were fewer people here. After all, the items auctioned on the 7th floor were even more expensive, and not everyone could afford them. The auction house on the 7th floor was the highest place in the entire auction house. Only the most precious items were auctioned here. Niet Tian and the rest went straight to VIP room 5 on the 7th floor and waited quietly for the auction to begin. A moment later, an old man in a green robe walked onto the auction stage. It was none other than the auction house's grand steward, Yu Rushue. Niet Tian frowned when he saw Yu Rushue. He was surprised. As the auction house's grand steward, Yu Rushue had personally auctioned an item. It was definitely not an ordinary item. Niet Tian was very curious about the next item to be auctioned. "Ladies and gentlemen, the next item we are auctioning is a very rare item." At this moment, Yu Rushue's voice sounded. "This item is worthless to those who don't need it, but it is a priceless treasure to those who need it." "What is that?" The crowd's curiosity was piqued by Yu Rushue, and they couldn't help but start discussing. "Ladies and gentlemen, the auction for this item is different from usual. The owner of the item not only set a minimum price, but also a maximum price." Yu Rushue then said in a clear voice, "The starting price of this item is 500 top-grade St. Crystals, and the final maximum price is 2,000 top-grade St. Crystals." Maximum price? Everyone was stunned when they heard what Yu Rushue said. They were puzzled. In auctions, there was always a starting price. How could there be a maximum price? Anyone who auctioned an item would certainly hope that the price of their item was as high as possible. Who knew what the person who set a maximum price for an item was thinking? However, the owner of the item said that if anyone offers a price higher than the maximum price, they must meet with him. If the owner of the item is not satisfied with the bidder, this item will not be sold. Yu Rushue continued. As soon as his words fell, it was like a stone that stirred up 1,000 ripples. What kind of rule is this? How can he not sell it after offering the highest price? Is this person crazy? I think this person is purely here to cause trouble. I really don't know why the Thousand Treasures Chamber of Commerce is auctioning this person's item. The crowd was in an uproar as they discussed. They were all people who had experienced countless auctions, but this was the first time they had seen such a strange auction method. Ladies and gentlemen, please be quiet. At this moment, Shui waved her hand and said, "If you don't accept this sir's auction method, you don't have to bid at all. Just treat it as a good show." Although she said that, Shui was secretly laughing in her heart. When this item comes out, you will definitely fight to the death for it. The crowd was puzzled, and their voices gradually became softer. Then, a lady in pink with a voluptuous figure walked over with a plate in her hand. On it was an ancient scroll. Is that the scroll? Everyone's eyes trembled as they looked at the ancient scroll. Their expressions could not help but become heated. Everyone wanted to know what kind of scroll it was to be auctioned in such a strange way. Everyone be careful. At this moment, Shui stepped forward and reached out to take the scroll. She actually opened it. Boom! Suddenly, a boundless energy was released. In an instant, it filled the entire auction hall on the 7th floor. At this moment, everyone felt their yuan meridians tremble as if they had been struck by lightning. Chapter 3475. Chapter 1470. Saint Rank Life Technique. Everyone's eyes trembled as they looked at the scroll in shock. It was hard to imagine what kind of power was contained in the scroll for it to be so terrifying. At this moment, Shui suddenly closed the scroll and looked at the crowd with a smile. Everyone, did you feel the power just now? Yes. Everyone nodded their heads in a daze. Obviously, they wanted to know what kind of scroll it was to be able to release such a powerful force. It's a life technique scroll. Shui's eyes swept across the crowd as her lips curled into a faint smile. Furthermore, it's an advanced Saint Rank Life technique. Life technique. Everyone's eyes trembled when they heard these two words, their expressions filled with shock. No wonder the power contained in the scroll was so powerful. It turned out to be the legendary Life Technique Scroll. Everyone present was a powerful cultivator, so of course they knew what a Life Technique Scroll was. A Life Technique was used to cultivate one's martial Dao fate. Even the lowest grade Life Technique was extremely expensive. This was because those who could cultivate a martial Dao fate were all monstrous geniuses, and most of these people had powerful backgrounds. Everyone, this advanced Saint Rank Life Technique Scroll starts at 500 Supreme Grade Saint Crystals. Do you think it's expensive? Shui smiled faintly and asked loudly. It's not expensive. Everyone responded in unison as if they were fanatical. Life techniques were divided into spirit, divine, and saint ranks. Each rank was further divided into primary, intermediate, and advanced. It was no exaggeration to say that a spirit rank life technique scroll could sometimes be sold for 500 supreme grade saint crystals. As for the highest grade advanced saint rank life technique scroll, it was simply a priceless treasure. Those great families and sects might even pay any price to obtain an advanced saint rank martial technique scroll. It could be said that this advanced Saint Rank Life Technique Scroll had a starting price of 500 Supreme Grade Saint Crystals and an upper limit of 2,000 Supreme Grade Saint Crystals. It was practically a free gift. An advanced Saint Rank Life Technique, if taken to family or sect, could be exchanged for hundreds of thousands or even millions of top-grade Saint Crystals. I offer 2,000 Supreme Grade Saint Crystals. I offer 2,000 Supreme Grade Saint Crystals too. Me too. I'm willing to pay 20,000 top grade Saint Crystals. In the next moment, everyone suddenly reacted. Without waiting for Shui to announce the start of the auction, they began to bid wildly. Some people even raised the price by 10 times. Everyone, please be quiet. Shui had already anticipated this situation. She smiled faintly and motioned for everyone to be quiet. Thank you for your enthusiasm, but I'm sorry, but not everyone here is qualified to bid. What do you mean? Everyone's eyes widened in shock. That lord said that only martial artists who have awakened their lifelines are qualified to bid. Yurushue smiled faintly and said, "Therefore, if you haven't awakened your lifeline, please don't bid." This. Everyone was taken aback, and most of them had ugly expressions on their faces. The lifeline was not something that could be awakened easily. There were many people with a martial Tao life providence, but very few people could awaken a life meridian. Among all the martial artists who had a martial Tao fate, less than 1 in 100 could awaken their fate meridians. Then everyone was in a mess and began to shout and shout. What kind of condition is this? Isn't this bullying? That's right. I haven't awakened a life meridian, but I know someone who has. If I haven't awakened a life meridian, doesn't that mean I don't have a life skill? Give me the life skill, and I can awaken a life meridian. The crowd shouted loudly, and the scene was about to become chaotic. Everyone, please be quiet. Yurushue growled. Her voice was like thunder, resounding throughout the entire auction house. Suddenly, the entire place quieted down. The rules of the Million Treasures Chamber of Commerce were as firm as iron, and no one dared to behave atrociously here. Everyone, this is the Lord's condition. As the entrusted party, the Million Treasures Chamber of Commerce can only abide by it. Please forgive us. Yurushue nodded and smiled when she saw that everyone had calmed down. Everyone immediately sighed, but there was nothing they could do. Everyone, the auction begins now. Those who have awakened a life meridian and are interested in the life skill, please bid. Yurushue smiled faintly and announced the start of the auction. This time, the entire auction house fell silent. There were many powerful people present, but there were very few who had awakened a life meridian. Moreover, everyone present was smart. Since the person behind the life skill dared to make these conditions, it meant that this person's strength and status were very high. Otherwise, the Million Treasures Chamber of Commerce would not have accepted so many harsh conditions. 2,000 top-grade St. Crystals. After a long time, a low voice sounded from VIP Room 8. It was the first person to bid. At the same time, in VIP Room 5, Niet Tian frowned as he thought to himself in surprise. It's that guy again. At this moment, he sensed that the person sitting in VIP Room 8 was the black-robed cultivator again. He did not expect that guy to come to the auction house on the 7th floor. At this point, the Ghost Emperor couldn't hold back any longer and called out to Niet Tian. Niet Tian, make a bid. When the Saint Grade life skill first appeared, Ghost Emperor was very excited and could not wait to get his hands on the life skill. On the other hand, Niet Tian was very calm. Niet Tian nodded and shouted, 2,000 top-grade St. Crystals. Everyone in the auction house was stunned when they heard these two voices. They did not expect that there would be two cultivators with awakened life meridians on the 7th floor. 2,000 top-grade St. Crystals. 2,000 top-grade St. Crystals. At this moment, two more voices sounded almost at the same time. Two more people. The crowd could not help but exclaim. There were only a few thousand people on the 7th floor, but there were 4 cultivators with awakened life meridians. Was this really possible? But at this moment, weren't the people who dared to bid those who had awakened their life meridians? Then, the entire auction house was dead silent for a long time. Good. Since no one is bidding, we'll stop here. Yurushue glanced at the crowd and smiled faintly. Then, she said loudly, next, please come to VIP Room 9. VIP Room 9. The crowd's eyes trembled as they looked at VIP Room 9. It turned out that the owner of the Saint Grade life skill was in VIP Room 9. At the same time, in VIP Room 5. Niet Tian, did you really awaken your life meridians? Ning Ziyu's little face was a little stiff as she looked at Niet Tian with uncertainty and asked in shock. Yes. Niet Tian nodded calmly. Let me tell you, this is the auction house of the 1,000 Treasures Chamber of Commerce. If you break the rules, you'll be in big trouble. Even I won't be able to protect you. Ning Ziyu said nervously in disbelief. It was obvious that she did not believe that Niet Tian had awakened his life meridians. Only those who had awakened their life meridians were qualified to bid for this auction. If Nyetian did not awaken his life meridians but still participated in the auction, it would be against the rules of the Thousand Treasures Chamber of Commerce. Chapter 3476. What about me? Nyetian, if you haven't awakened your lifeline, it's not too late to back out now. I'll talk to attendant Yu, and she'll protect you, Ning Ziyu said anxiously, still not trusting Nyetian. Miss Z, trust me. Nyetian smiled faintly and said confidently. He knew that Ning Ziyu was doing this for his own good, but she was underestimating him too much. All right. Ning Ziyu could feel the confidence in Nyetian's eyes. Her eyes flickered and she finally nodded her head. Then, Nyetian and the others left VIP Room 5 and arrived outside VIP Room 9. First young mistress. Yu Rushui couldn't help but cry out in shock when she saw Ning Ziyu and the others. She didn't expect Ning Ziyu to participate in the auction. Did she awaken her lifeline? It's him. Ning Ziyu frowned and pointed at Nyetian. Yu Rushui's expression froze, and she was stunned. So the person who awakened her lifeline was not Ning Ziyu, but Nyetian. But wasn't Nyetian Ning Ziyu's guard? Was it possible for a guard to awaken his lifeline? Attendant Yu, can we go in now? Ning Ziyu looked at Yu Rushui and asked. Eldest miss, I'm sorry. That lord only sees bidders and not others. I'll have to trouble you to wait outside. Yu Rushui looked at Ning Ziyu with a troubled expression. Who the hell is that guy? Why is he so arrogant? Ning Ziyu was unhappy when she heard that. She couldn't help but shout. Eldest miss, don't shout. Yu Rushui was so scared that cold sweat dripped down his forehead. He quickly waved his hand to signal Ning Ziyu to be quiet. He knew that the lord in VIP Room 9 had an extraordinary identity. Even the Thousand Treasures Chamber of Commerce had to be wary of him. He didn't understand why such a big shot would come to the seventh sacred world of cultivators to auction a sage-level life technique. I'll go in alone. Nyetian looked at Ning Ziyu and said calmly but firmly. Ning Ziyu frowned and could only nod. Nyetian smiled faintly and strode into VIP Room 9. After he entered, he saw a middle-aged man in white sitting upright in the center of the room. His appearance was cold and handsome, and he looked extremely dignified. Beside the middle-aged man stood a young man whose skin was as pale as paper. He looked sickly, as if he was about to wither away. In addition, there were three other people on the side, a black-clothed youth, a red-haired martial artist, and a gloomy youth. Apart from Nyetian, these three people were the remaining three bidders. At this moment, Nyetian could not help but frown. He did not see the cultivator in black who wanted to attack Ning Ziyu. He could not help but feel uneasy. However, Ning Ziyu was accompanied by Yu Rushui. No matter how arrogant that black-clothed cultivator was, he would not dare to attack her. At this moment, the atmosphere in the room was a little strange. The middle-aged man's gaze moved between Nyetian and the others strangely. Sometimes he frowned, and sometimes he smiled. His expression was rich, but he did not say a word. Sir, the four of us are the bidders. After a long time, the red-haired martial artist seemed to be a little impatient. He stepped forward and said, Sir, may I ask, among the four of us, who will obtain the sage-level life technique? You probably do not have a chance. The middle-aged man smiled faintly and looked directly at the red-haired martial artist. Why? The red-haired martial artist's gaze trembled, and his expression immediately became gloomy. A cold light flashed in his eyes as he said, Sir, do you know who I am? What's so great about having the divine emperor's bloodline? The middle-aged man laughed and said, Your bloodline power is very strong, but it's a pity that your fate isn't good. You're almost 200 years old, but you've only awakened 2 life veins, and you haven't even reached the realm of life patterns. It would be too much of a waste to give you a sacred fate chant. You, the red-haired martial artist's eyes narrowed, and his expression became extremely gloomy. He was speechless. He did not expect that the middle-aged man could see through him with just a few glances. He had clearly hidden his bloodline power and life veins very well. So how did the middle-aged man find out? Nyetian frowned and glanced at the red-haired martial artist. The latter had awakened 2 life veins, which was similar to Prince Fei Tian. However, the red-haired martial artist was younger, not even 200 years old. So you are from the divine Emperor clan. No wonder you are so arrogant. At this moment, the gloomy young man glanced at the red-haired man and said coldly, "You are not bad yourself." As soon as he finished speaking, the middle-aged man smiled again and said, "You are a dragon martial artist, and you have the bloodline of a black dragon. You have already awakened 3 life veins, so you are much stronger than the red-haired martial artist." The gloomy young man's gaze froze. Then he laughed and bowed. "Thank you for your compliment, sir. I'm not complimenting you. I'm just speaking the truth." The middle-aged man smiled faintly with a calm expression. Nietion glanced at the gloomy young man. So the latter was a dragon martial artist. He had seen a dragon martial artist before. The Myriad Domains Guild's president, Zhao Jue, was a dragon martial artist. However, the bloodline power of this gloomy young man seemed to be much stronger than Zhao Jue. Moreover, the gloomy young man had awakened 3 life veins, which meant that his martial path fate was also very strong. "All right, let's talk about you." Then, the middle-aged man looked at the black-clothed young man and asked, "You are from the Myriad Treasures Guild. Who is Ning Jinshi to you?" "My name is Ning Zifeng. The name that Sir mentioned is my grandfather." Ning Zifeng bowed slightly, neither servile nor overbearing, and was very polite. "So you are Ning Jinshi's grandson. No wonder your bloodline power is so strong." The middle-aged man laughed and said faintly, "Ning Zifeng, you are not even 100 years old, but you have already reached the heavenly charm realm. Moreover, you have awakened 3 life veins in your body, and your fate cultivation has even reached the life pattern realm. Looks like elder brother Ning Jinshi has a pretty good grandson. You flatter me." Ning Zifeng nodded slightly, and a faint smile appeared on his face. When the red-haired martial artist with the Divine Phoenix bloodline and the gloomy young man with the Black Dragon bloodline heard the middle-aged man's words, their expressions changed, and they looked at Ning Zifeng in shock. They did not expect the latter's talent to be so strong. 3 life veins and reaching the life pattern realm. He was indeed a genius. It seemed like the saint-level life formula was Ning Zifeng's. But unfortunately, the fate of the 3 of you is still lacking compared to my disciple. However, at this time, the middle-aged man suddenly looked at the pale young man beside him and said, "My disciple has awakened 6 life veins." 6 life veins. Ning Zifeng and the other 2 exclaimed at the same time. Then, their expressions froze, and they could not speak for a long time. They never expected that the pale young man with an ordinary appearance had awakened 6 life veins. A martial artist with 6 life veins was too scary. However, since this pale young man was the middle-aged man's disciple, and he had awakened 6 life veins, why did the middle-aged man not let the pale young man cultivate the saint-level life formula, but auction it instead? Even my disciple is not qualified to cultivate this advanced saint-level life formula. Do you think you're qualified? At this time, the middle-aged man glanced at Ning Zifeng and the other 2 and smiled faintly. Ning Zifeng and the other 2 had ugly expressions, and they were speechless. Chapter 3477. Another condition Nietion took a step forward with a faint smile and looked at the middle-aged man calmly. At this moment, Ning Zifeng and the other 2 looked at Nietion at the same time, their eyes filled with disdain. Ever since the 4 of them entered the room, the middle-aged man only commented on the 3 of them and did not even look at Nietion. This made Ning Zifeng and the others feel that Nietion was not worthy of the middle-aged man's attention. But now, Nietion stood out of his own accord. Wasn't he looking for humiliation? Moreover, the middle-aged man already said that his disciple had awakened 6 lifeline meridians, but was not qualified to cultivate the life skill. Could it be that Nietion had awakened more than 6 lifeline meridians? If Nietion had awakened more than 6 lifeline meridians, Ning Zifeng and the others would definitely not believe it. To them, it was already very good for Nietion to be able to awaken 1 lifeline. Nietion ignored the 3 of them and looked at the middle-aged man calmly, waiting for him to speak. At this moment, the middle-aged man looked at Ning Zifeng and the others and said in a deep voice, "You 3, Please leave first. Huh? Ning Zifeng was stunned and asked why. The deal between us is over. I will not sell the holy class life skill to you. What's the point of you staying here? The middle-aged man's face darkened. His eyes were murderous and surged with a cold glint. Ning Zifeng and the other two could not help but shudder when they felt the murderous pressure. They were horrified. Only then did the three of them realize that the middle-aged man sitting in front of them was a very frightening expert. Although the three of them were unwilling, they did not dare to disobey the middle-aged man. They could only look at Nye Tian and leave. They felt strange. Why did the middle-aged man have to send them away before he was willing to speak to Nye Tian? Could it be that he was really going to sell the life skill to Nye Tian? Ah Fei, how many lifeline did you see on him? The middle-aged man asked the pale-faced youth after he was sure that Ning Zifeng and the others had left. I can't tell. The youth named Hoodlum frowned and looked at Nye Tian with a strange expression as he shook his head. Even you can't tell. Looks like he has at least 6 lifelines. The middle-aged man's eyes slightly narrowed and flashed with an unconcealable heat. He murmured, I just don't know if he has met my requirements. When Nye Tian heard the conversation between the master and disciple, he couldn't help but frown. Only then did he realize that the middle-aged man didn't sense how many life veins he had. Young man, what's your name? The middle-aged man looked at Nye Tian and asked. Junior Nye Tian. Nye Tian agreed, bowed slightly, and asked in a neither servile nor overbearing manner, May I know how to address you, sir? My surname is Lung. You can call me Mr. Lung. The middle-aged man smiled faintly. Then he frowned and said, Nye Tian, the space of your lifeline is the strangest one I've ever seen. Not only is the space of your lifeline larger than an ordinary martial artist's, but the aura of your lifeline is also stronger. This means that your destiny and lifeline are much stronger than others. But your lifeline is very vague. I can't sense how many there are. 9. As soon as Mr. Lung finished his sentence, Nye Tian and Hoodlum's voices were heard almost at the same time. Nye Tian was stunned and looked at Hoodlum with a trembling gaze. He didn't expect Hoodlum to sense his lifeline. Hoodlum's pupils contracted and his pale face was stunned. He was shocked that Nye Tian really had 9 lifelines. He had only vaguely sensed the existence of the 9 auras and made a guess. He was shocked that he had guessed correctly. Nye Tian was a person with 9 lifelines. 9 lifelines? How is that possible? There really is a martial artist with 9 lifelines in this world. 9 lifelines. In the next second, Mr. Lung heard Nye Tian and Hoodlum's words. His eyes trembled and he was stunned speechless for a long time. Nye Tian, you have 9 life meridians? Mr. Lung finally came to his senses. His eyes were burning with desire as he stared at Nye Tian. Nye Tian nodded. He then moved his divine sense, and the 9 lifelines in his lifeline space spread out, releasing a strong destiny aura. In an instant, Mr. Lung and Hoodlum could clearly sense the aura of the 9 life veins. The master and disciple's eyes trembled and they gasped in shock. At this moment, they no longer had any doubts about the fact that Nye Tian had 9 life veins. Mr. Lung, can I get the life skill now? Nye Tian kept the aura of his lifelines and asked with a smile. His life meridian was a little strange. Usually, it would have 9 life meridians overlapping together, looking like a single life meridian. Only when Nye Tian purposely released, it would the 9 lifelines spread out. Nye Tian, your lifeline is the most powerful one I've ever seen in my life. After a while, Mr. Lung calmed down and looked at Nye Tian. In terms of lifelines, you've met my requirements. However, if you want to get the life skill, you have to agree to another condition. Nye Tian looked at Mr. Lung and his face darkened. He initially thought that he could get the holy ranked life skill after gaining Mr. Lung's approval. He did not expect Mr. Lung to have other conditions. Nye Tian, the life skill doesn't belong to me. It belongs to my sect. Mr. Lung said, therefore, if you want to get the life skill, you have to join my sect. Join your sect? Nye Tian frowned, his expression extremely unsightly. He did not expect Mr. Lung's condition to be so harsh. Along the way, He rarely joined any sects because he didn't want to be restricted. Mr. Lung's condition was what annoyed him the most. "I'm sorry, I'm not interested." Without hesitation, Nye Tian rejected and left. Wait! Mr. Lung did not expect Nye Tian to reject him so quickly. He panicked and called out to Nye Tian, "Nye Tian, don't you want to know which sect I'm in?" "Not interested," Nye Tianling replied coldly, without turning his head. "Feng Tian Fate Sect." Mr. Lung's eyes trembled, and he became even more anxious. "Nye Tian, wait." Hearing these words, the Ghost Emperor's voice suddenly sounded out. His eyes trembled and gave off a scorching light. Nye Tian stopped in his tracks when he heard the Ghost Emperor's voice. Seeing that Nye Tian suddenly stopped, Mr. Lung couldn't help but frown. His face darkened, and a strange look appeared in his eyes. Chapter 3478. Feng Tian Ming School. Nye Tian, you've heard of the Feng Tian Fate Sect? Mr. Lung frowned when he saw Nye Tian stop. Yes. Nye Tian turned around and looked at Mr. Lung. He nodded slightly and said, "It said that the earliest dominant organization to appear in the All-Heaven Saints world was the Feng Tian Sect. Rumor has it that the warriors of the Feng Tian Sect only cultivate two types of bloodline powers, martial path fate and heavenly path soul fate. The cultivators of the Feng Tian Sect are all very powerful. At their peak, the power of the entire sect once spread to half of the Saints' world. But later, the Feng Tian Sect broke out in internal strife, causing the sect's strength to be greatly weakened. From then on, it was unable to recover and gradually withdrew from the public sight. The Feng Tian Fate Sect that Mr. Lung mentioned should be a branch of the Feng Tian Sect." After that, Nye Tian looked at Mr. Lung with a burning gaze, while the latter's face was gloomy. Mr. Lung didn't expect Nye Tian to know so much about the Feng Tian Sect and the Feng Tian Fate Sect. Of course, this was all said by the Ghost Emperor. Nye Tian was merely repeating it. Nye Tian was also very surprised. It turned out that the Feng Tian Sect was actually so powerful that it had once ruled over the Sacred Heavens world. At that time, the Feng Tian Sect would undoubtedly be equivalent to the heavenly Tao Sacred Pavilion. Nye Tian, you do know a lot of things. However, there are still many things that you do not know. A while later, Mr. Lung sighed. The Feng Tian Fate Sect is indeed related to the Feng Tian Sect. You could say that it's a branch of the Feng Tian Sect. However, the internal strife of the Feng Tian Sect back then was not as simple as you said. Yes, Nye Tian nodded. How could a sect that once ruled over the all-heavens sacred world have an internal conflict? Mr. Lung, do you want me to join your sect? Nye Tian asked. Yes. Mr. Lung nodded heavily as a strange look flashed across his eyes. After a long hesitation, he finally said, Nye Tian, the life incantation in my hand isn't a premium saint grade life incantation at all. Not a high-level saint level. Nye Tian was stunned for a moment, and his face darkened. Advanced Sage was the highest level of life skill. If Mr. Lung's life skill wasn't Advanced Sage, wouldn't it be lower than this level? The life skill in my hand is a Transcendent Sage level life skill. Mr. Lung looked at Nye Tian and said in a deep voice. Nye Tian's eyes darkened, and he was stunned. Were there any Transcendent Saint rank life tactics in this world? The Fate Chant in my hand is called the Feng Tian Fate Chant. It is the Feng Tian Sect's Fate Chant. Mr. Lung's expression turned serious as he said, the Feng Tian Fate Chant was obtained by the founder of the Feng Tian Sect, the first Beacon Emperor in the Ghostland, the first forbidden area of the all-heaven sacred world. Back then, the Feng Tian Sect was able to rise because of the first Beacon Emperor. The reason why the first Beacon Emperor was so powerful was because of the Feng Tian Fate Chant. In fact, the entire all-heaven sacred world only realized how powerful the martial path Fate Chant was after the first Beacon Emperor. It can be said that the first Beacon Emperor was the first person in the all-heaven sacred world to cultivate the martial path Fate Chant. Mr. Lung paused for a moment and fell silent. Meanwhile, Nye Tian's eyes were trembling, and he was extremely shocked. Although they had only exchanged a few words, Nye Tian could feel how heroic the first Beacon Emperor of the Feng Tian Sect was. He ruled the entire all-heaven sacred world with his own strength. Such a great achievement could be said to be world-shattering. Later on, the first Beacon Emperor was harmed by a scoundrel, and his life was in danger. Mr. Lung continued. Before he died, the first Beacon Emperor engraved the incantations of the Fengtian Fate Chant and left behind a message that the person who could fuse the Fengtian Fate Chant would be the next Beacon Emperor of the Fengtian sect. Unfortunately, none of the countless martial geniuses in the Fengtian sect were able to fuse the Fengtian Fate Chant. As a result, the Fengtian sect did not have a Beacon Emperor for a very long time. This was also the beginning of the internal strife in the Fengtian sect. Later on, because no one could fuse the Fengtian Fate Chant for a very long time, the two sect masters of the Fengtian sect decided to use the Fengtian Fate Chant as the source to create other fate chants. As a result, many fate chants began to appear, but they were all of a lower level than the Fengtian Fate Chant. It can be said that almost half of the fate chants in the all-sacred world originated from the Fengtian Fate Chant. Nietian's eyes narrowed when he heard Mr. Lung's words. He was shocked. The first Beacon Emperor was the first person to cultivate the martial destiny. Half of the fate chants in the all-sacred world originated from the Fengtian Fate Chant. It was evident how powerful the Fengtian sect was back then. Why has no one been able to fuse the Fengtian Fate Chant? Nietian could not help but ask with a frown. The Fengtian Fate Chant's level is too high. It has a high requirement for the cultivator's fate chants. Mr. Lung's face sank. Back then, the first Beacon Emperor was able to fuse the Fengtian Fate Chant because he had awakened 9 fate chants in his body. But after him, no one in the Fengtian sect was able to awaken 9 fate chants. So that's how it is. Nietian frowned as his expression flickered. He was the same as the first Beacon Emperor, awakening 9 fate chants. Did that mean he could successfully fuse the Fengtian Fate Chant? Nietian, I've searched the entire all-sacred world, but I've never found anyone with 9 fate chants. You're the only one. Mr. Lung's expression turned serious. As long as you join the Fengtian Fate sect, I can help you fuse the Fengtian Fate Chant immediately. As long as you successfully fuse the Fengtian Fate Chant, you'll be the Beacon Emperor of the Fengtian Fate sect. Nietian stared at Mr. Lung. His eyes narrowed as his expression sank. The Fengtian Fate Chant was indeed something good. He really wanted it, but he would have to reconsider if he had to join the Fengtian Fate sect or even become the Beacon Emperor. He didn't like being restricted. Once he joined the Fengtian Fate sect, he would have a whole new identity, which wasn't a good thing for him. Nietian, if you become the Beacon Emperor, everyone in the Fengtian Fate sect will listen to your orders. What's wrong with that? Mr. Lung frowned as he saw Nietian's hesitation. Mr. Lung, I can join the Fengtian Fate sect, but I have a condition. Nietian spoke after some thought. Speak. Mr. Lung's eyes burned with passion. From the look of it, he would agree to Nietian's conditions no matter how many times he asked. Mr. Lung, I want to know, what's your identity in the Fengtian Fate sect? Nietian asked with a frown. I'm the sect master of the Fengtian Fate sect. Mr. Lung was startled. Sect master? Nietian's eyebrows furrowed in confusion. The Fengtian Fate sect was different from the other sections. They had the Beacon Emperor and the sect master. The Beacon Emperor is the true ruler of the Fengtian Fate sect. The sect master is only someone who manages the sect for the Beacon Emperor. Mr. Lung looked at Nietian. He thought that the latter was wondering who had a higher status between the Beacon Emperor and the sect master. Chapter 3479. The new Beacon Emperor Mr. Lung stared at Nietian for a second, but he quickly reacted and nodded. He finally understood that Nietian was worried about the Fengtian Fate sect taking up his time. The Fengtian Fate sect was a special sect. The Beacon Emperor usually didn't care about the sect's affairs and left everything to the sect leader. As for Nietian, even if he became the Beacon Emperor, he still needed a long time to grow. During this time, he wouldn't be able to help the Fengtian Fate sect, even if something were to happen. Mr. Lung, do you understand what I'm saying? Seeing that Mr. Lung had agreed to his condition, Nietian couldn't help but frown and say, I'm saying that before I become a paragon saint, I won't help the wind heaven fate sect, no matter what. Understood. Mr. Lung chuckled. Don't worry. If you really become the Beacon King, the Feng Tian Fate School will be your strongest shield and will not implicate you at all. Nie Tian frowned and nodded with a puzzled look on his face. It was hard to believe that Mr. Lung would agree to such a harsh condition. Then what was the use of being the Beacon Emperor? He was just a decoration. Nie Tian, let's start fusing with the heavenly Beacon Fate incantation now, Mr. Lung said excitedly as he couldn't wait any longer. Now, Nie Tian didn't expect Mr. Lung to be in such a hurry. Don't worry, it won't take too long to fuse with the Feng Tian Fate Art. It will take at most a few minutes. If you can't fuse with the Feng Tian Fate Art, it means that your fate and lifeline aren't strong enough, Mr. Lung said excitedly as he nodded. Won't there be any strange phenomenon when the Feng Tian Fate Art is merged? Nie Tian frowned and asked uneasily. I don't know either. You'll find out after you successfully merge the Feng Tian Fate Art. Mr. Lung smiled, and an ancient scroll appeared in his hand. It was the Feng Tian Fate Art. Nie Tian's eyes flickered as he stared at the Heavenly Fate incantation scroll. The Fate Technique scroll that he sensed at this moment was actually much more powerful than the scroll that Yurushue had taken out on the auction stage. The scroll that Attendant Yu took out was only a Saint-tier, high-tier Fate Art created according to the Heaven's Beacon Fate Art. The scroll in my hand is the real Heaven's Beacon Fate Art scroll. Mr. Lung saw Nie Tian's doubt and smiled. Nie Tian narrowed his eyes and immediately understood. The Heaven's Beacon Fate Art was the sect's defining treasure. Of course, they wouldn't casually give it to others. Mr. Lung only gave Yurushue a Fate Art derived from the Feng Tian Fate Art. However, this was enough. A superior Sage Fate Art was enough to attract martial Dao Fate geniuses. Nie Tian, are you ready? Mr. Lung's face suddenly became serious as he asked in a deep voice. Nie Tian took a deep breath and nodded slightly. Unbelievable. Mr. Lung actually wanted to fuse the life skill for him in the auction house. Fei. Mr. Lung nodded and called out to Fei, who was behind him. The latter understood and immediately walked out. When fusing the life skill, one had to be fully focused and could not be disturbed. Then, Mr. Lung waved his hand, and a powerful barrier appeared, instantly enveloping the entire room. Nie Tian's eyes flickered involuntarily as he examined the ward around him. He was incomparably shocked. He had never seen such a terrifying barrier before. Mr. Lung's strength was truly unfathomable. Nie Tian, calm down and get ready to receive the Heaven's Beacon Fate Art. At this moment, Mr. Lung said in a deep voice with a sacred and solemn tone. Nie Tian took a deep breath and sat with his legs crossed. He focused on the space in his life meridian. Boom! Mr. Lung nodded slightly and slowly opened the Heaven's Beacon Fate Art scroll in his hand. Suddenly, a powerful force of the life skill was released, causing the surrounding air to tremble. The entire room was filled with a terrifying force of the life skill. Nie Tian, feel the Heaven's Beacon Fate Art carefully. Fuse the force of the life skill with your life meridian. Mr. Lung said in a deep voice as he forcefully activated the life skill around Nie Tian's body. Nie Tian felt that his entire body was enveloped by the powerful force of the life skill. It was so oppressive that he felt like he was suffocating. This terrifying power was boundless and boundless, as if it existed in the entire world. Nie Tian tried to absorb the force of the life skill. However, the powerful force seemed to reject his body. No matter how hard he tried, he could not absorb any of it. Nie Tian's expression changed, and he was shocked. With his talent, could he not fuse the Heaven's Beacon Fate Art? Mr. Lung also noticed this. He took a deep breath, and his face darkened. He had tried to fuse the Heaven's Beacon Fate Art with Fei. Although the latter did not succeed, it did not reject the life skill like Nie Tian. Nie Tian had awakened 9 life meridians. It should be more compatible with the Heaven's Beacon Fate Art. Why was it rejecting the life skill? Mr. Lung did not give up. Instead, he activated the life skill even more violently, trying to force Nye Tian to fuse with it. However, the life skill could not enter Nye Tian's body. Instead, it rejected Nye Tian more and more. What's going on? Mr. Lung was shocked. He did not expect this to happen. It seemed that the Heaven's Beacon Fate art was afraid of Nye Tian. To be more precise, it was afraid of a certain force in Nye Tian's body. Nye Tian, think of a way to hide your godly demon power. Ghost Emperor's voice was suddenly heard, reminding Nye Tian. Nye Tian's eyes narrowed. He reacted immediately, and the godly demon power in his body exploded. Instantly, the life skill art moved further away from him. Then, Nye Tian injected all the godly demon power into the Saint's Spirit Blood Seal and stored it there temporarily. At this moment, the life skill art calmed down and moved closer to Nye Tian. Indeed, the life skill art was afraid of Nye Tian. It was afraid of the godly demon power in his body. After the godly demon power was hidden, the life skill art immediately entered Nye Tian's body. It's starting to fuse. Mr. Lung could feel the life skill art quickly entering Nye Tian's body. His eyes lit up, and he was pleasantly surprised. Then, the life skill art flowed into Nye Tian's life meridian like a river bursting through a dam. It quickly merged with Nye Tian's 9 life meridians. In the blink of an eye, all the life skill art had completely merged with the 9 life meridians as if they were one. At this moment, Nye Tian could feel that his 9 life meridians had become much stronger in an instant. The life skill art has successfully merged. Mr. Lung's eyes widened when he saw all the life skill art disappear. Nye Tian had successfully merged with the Heaven's Beacon Fate art and became the Beacon Emperor of the Heaven's Beacon Fate sect. Chapter 3480. The Mark of the Beacon Emperor in VIP Room 9. Mr. Lung looked at Nye Tian with trembling eyes. He was extremely shocked. After the fall of the first Beacon King, no one was able to fuse with the Beacon Heaven Fate law. Thus, the Beacon Heaven Fate School never had a Beacon King, only a sect master. Now, Nye Tian had become the new Beacon Emperor, the second Beacon Emperor of the Fengtian Fate sect. After countless years without a Beacon Emperor, the Fengtian Fate sect finally had a new Beacon Emperor. How could Lung Shuang Wuchen not be excited? Lung Shuang Wuchen was Mr. Lung's name. From today onwards, the Fengtian Fate sect has a Beacon Emperor. At this moment, his eyes were filled with tears. He was obviously extremely excited. Boom! At this moment, a strange wave was suddenly released from Nye Tian's body. It turned into a strange force in the void. The sudden scene gave Lung Shuang Wuchen no time to react. His body shook, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Immediately after, the strange wave passed through the boundary Lung Shuang Wuchen set up and spread in all directions. Outside the VIP room, Ning Zifeng and the others did not leave. Instead, they waited anxiously. Although they had no fate with the Fengtian Fate technique, they wanted to know why Lung Shuang Wuchen left Nye Tian alone. However, at this moment, Hoodlum, Ning Zifeng, and the others suddenly felt their lifelines tremble inexplicably. It was as if they sensed something terrifying. In the next moment, their expressions changed, and they spat out a mouthful of blood. At the same time, all the martial artists in the sacred world of seventh cultivators, and even the entire sacred world who had awakened their lifelines also felt their lifelines tremble and spat out blood. Many martial artists with lifelines who were in the midst of battle immediately stopped fighting after being affected by the trembling of their lifelines. The eyes of countless martial artists with lifelines trembled. They did not know what was happening. At that moment, Nye Tian stood up slowly in VIP room number 9 on the 7th floor of Myriad Treasure Mall's auction house. At this moment, his aura was incomparably sharp. His aura was sharper than before, giving off a piercing feeling. Mr. Lung, what's wrong? Nye Tian did not know what had happened. He suddenly saw Lung Shuang Wuchen spitting out blood with a pale face. He immediately stepped forward and asked, "Beacon Emperor, I'm fine." Lung Shuang Wuchen took a deep breath. Although there was blood at the corner of his mouth, his face was full of excitement. He bowed deeply to Nye Tian with great respect. Of course, he knew that the pulse just now was released after Nye Tian successfully merged with the Fengtian Fate art. The ripple from the life meridian was too strong. It exceeded his expectations. Even he spat out a mouthful of blood after being hit by the life meridian. However, the martial artists who had not awakened their life meridians did not sense the ripple at all. Mr. Lung, before I officially take over the Fengtian Fate Sect, you should call me Nie Tian. Nie Tian looked at Lung Xuan Wuchen and said with a faint smile. All right. Lung Xuan Wuchen thought for a while and nodded. Although the Fengtian Fate Sect had a new beacon emperor, it was better not to let this matter spread before Nie Tian grew stronger. What Nie Tian needed the most right now was to grow his strength. Nie Tian, although you don't care about the Fengtian Fate Sect now, you're still the beacon emperor of the Fengtian Fate Sect. At this moment, Lung Xuan Wuchen took out a black seal and said, "This is the Fengtian Fate Sect's beacon emperor jade seal. It represents the beacon emperor's supreme status. I'll give it to you for safekeeping." Nie Tian thought for a while and nodded slightly. He then took the beacon emperor jade seal. Nie Tian, there's a mark of the beacon emperor in the beacon emperor jade seal. Check it out, Lung Xuan Wuchen said to Nie Tian. Nie Tian frowned and probed the beacon emperor jade seal with his spirit sense. As expected, he sensed a powerful spirit sense mark. He then looked at Lung Xuan Wuchen and realized that there was a strange black mark on the latter's forehead. Nie Tian, do you see the beacon emperor's mark on my forehead now? Lung Xuan Wuchen looked at Nie Tian and asked with a faint smile. Yes. Nie Tian nodded. It turned out that the mark on Lung Xuan Wuchen's forehead was the beacon emperor's mark. The Fengtian Fate Sect now has 2 suzerains for banner leaders and 8 protectors. They're known as the 2 sects for banners and 8 protectors. Lung Xuan Wuchen smiled and said, "These people's spirit sense marks have been recorded in the Beacon Emperor Jade Seal. They all have the Beacon Emperor's mark on their foreheads. You're now the owner of the Beacon Emperor Jade Seal. You can see the Beacon Emperor's mark directly. So, when you see the 2 sects for banners and 8 protectors in the future, you can easily recognize them. As long as you take out the Beacon Emperor Jade Seal, they won't dare to disobey." "Thank you." Nie Tian nodded slightly. He understood that Lung Xuan Wuchen was protecting him in disguise. He might encounter the 2 sects for banners and 8 protectors in the future, and then he could ask them for help. Although the Fengtian Fate Sect had declined, a starving camel was still bigger than a horse. No matter how weak the 2 sects for banners and 8 protectors were, at least supreme saints. Lung Xuan Wuchen looked at Nie Tian and asked, "Nie Tian, you want to travel alone, right?" "Yes." Nie Tian nodded and said, "Don't worry, Mr. Lung. Since I'm already the Beacon Emperor of the Fengtian Fate Sect, I will naturally fulfill the responsibilities of a Beacon Emperor when I have the strength." Lung Xuan Wuchen nodded and did not say anything else. Then, the 2 of them walked out of the VIP lounge. "Master, are you all right?" Hoodlum had been waiting anxiously. When he saw Lung Xuan Wuchen coming out, his face turned pale, and he could not help but ask nervously. "I'm fine." Lung Xuan Wuchen smiled and asked, "Hoodlum, did you feel the movement of the lifeline just now?" "Yes." Hoodlum nodded and looked strangely at Nie Tian. His eyes trembled violently, and he was obviously very surprised, but he did not say anything. At this moment, Ning Zifeng took a step forward and looked at Lung Xuan Wuchen with a gloomy face. He asked coldly, "Sir, what was that movement of the lifeline just now?" "Do I need to tell you?" Lung Xuan Wuchen frowned and replied coldly, "You fuse the advanced saint-level life technique." Ning Zifeng frowned and looked at Nie Tian with killing intent in his eyes. "So what if I fused it? So what if I didn't fuse it? What does it have to do with you?" Nie Tian's eyes darkened, and he replied coldly, "How dare you, slave? You're just the guard of 19th Sister, a slave. What right do you have to speak to me like this?" Ning Zifeng's face darkened, and he suddenly shouted, Nie Tian frowned and was stunned. "5th brother, Nie Tian is my guard, not my servant," Ning Ziyu said indignantly, as she looked at Ning Zifeng from the side. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed and his expression changed slightly. He then realized that Ning Zifeng was Ning Ziyu's 5th brother. "How dare you?" Ning Zifeng roared, and suddenly turned to look at Ning Ziyu. He said in a deep voice, "He's your guard, so he's the Ning family's slave." Nie Tian looked at Ning Zifeng and his face darkened. He actually felt the killing intent in Ning Zifeng's eyes. Chapter 3481. Don't mess with me. Nie Tian could see the intense murderous intent in Ning Zifeng's eyes. His heart could not help but tremble, and he instantly understood. Ning Ziyu's flying mount had lost control because someone had set up a curse. The person who had the opportunity to set up a curse was definitely someone close to Ning Ziyu. Nie Tian had once suspected that Yu Shui was the one who wanted to harm Ning Ziyu. However, Yu Shui was too slick, and her status wasn't high enough. There was no reason for her to harm Ning Ziyu. Now that he saw Ning Zifeng's murderous intent, he instantly understood that the person who wanted to harm Ning Ziyu was Ning Zifeng. Ning Zifeng and Ning Ziyu were siblings, related by blood. However, in many large aristocratic families, this kind of bloodline relationship would seem very faint. Sometimes, in order to fight for resources or inheritance rights, even brothers would kill each other. Ning Zifeng, on the other hand, looked refined and courteous on the surface, but he was actually sinister and ruthless. Before he obtained the saint-level life skill, he was very respectful to Lung Shuangwuchen. However, his attitude was completely different now. At this moment, the look in his eyes when he was teaching Ning Ziyu a lesson was more murderous than angry. At that moment, Lung Shuangwuchen looked at Ning Zifeng without saying anything. He wanted to see how Nie Tian would handle the current situation. Nie Tian's talents were great, but as the Beacon Sky King, his temperament was equally important. "Brat, did you really integrate a saint-level life skill?" Ning Zifeng looked at Nie Tian and asked in a deep voice. "I fused with it. What do you want?" Nie Tian replied calmly. "You really fused with it?" Ning Zifeng's eyes were filled with shock and anger. His expression was clearly saying, "What right do you have to fuse with a life formula that even I, Ning Zifeng, am not qualified to do so? Are you angry that I fused with a holy grade life tactic?" Nie Tian frowned and said with a hint of provocation in his eyes, "Dog slave, is this how you talk to your master?" Ning Zifeng's eyes darkened, and his killing intent surged. He roared and looked like a ferocious beast. "Fifth brother, Nie Tian is not a slave." Before Nie Tian could speak, Ning Ziyu shouted from the side. She was obviously very angry. "Shut up." Ning Zifeng's pupils suddenly contracted. He suddenly turned around, raised his hand, and slapped him. "Ah!" Ning Ziyu's eyes trembled as she screamed in fright. But in the next moment, Ning Zifeng's hand stopped in midair. A hand like an iron clamp was gripping his wrist. "You!" Ning Zifeng's eyes trembled as he looked at Nie Tian in horror. He was obviously very afraid. He hadn't expected that Nie Tian would actually dare to stop him. What was even more unexpected was that the strength in Nie Tian's hand was extremely strong. That hand that was holding onto his wrist seemed to have the strength of 10,000 caddies, making him unable to move at all. "What about me?" Nie Tian looked at Ning Zifeng with a cold smile. He spoke in a low voice while secretly exerting strength in his hand. Crack, crack, crack. Instantly, the sound of bones breaking was heard. Ning Zifeng's wrist was actually forcefully broken by Nie Tian. Hoodlum's eyes trembled when he saw this. He couldn't help but turn to look at Lung Shuangwuchen. The latter's eyes were also filled with shock. Lung Shuangwuchen didn't expect Nie Tian to be so domineering and use such a method to deal with Ning Zifeng. Moreover, Nie Tian's martial constitution was also so strong that it was terrifying. Ning Zifeng was a holy disciple at the 3rd grade of the Heavenly Charm Realm, but the strength of his martial constitution was obviously far inferior to Nie Tian's. After being restrained by Nie Tian, Ning Zifeng couldn't fight back at all. He was like a piece of meat on a chopping board, waiting to be slaughtered. "You?" Ning Zifeng endured the intense pain. His eyes were incomparably fierce. He wanted to resist, but he realized that his strength was no match for Nie Tian's. The more he resisted, the stronger Nie Tian's strength became. "Young friend, don't be rash." Yu Shui, who was at the side, was so frightened that her face turned pale. Ning Zifeng was the owner of this auction. If something happened to him here, as the head warden, he would definitely be in trouble. At this moment, powerful auras appeared in the surrounding void. It was as if they were about to break through the void and attack Nie Tian. These experts were the auction house's secret guards. They were in charge of guarding the auction house and protecting Ning Zifeng. Nie Tian, let go of my fifth brother. At the same time, Ning Ziyu's voice was heard, and she shouted anxiously. It was obvious that she hadn't sensed Ning Zifeng's killing intent toward her. Brat, if you dare to touch me, you won't be able to walk out of this auction house alive. Ning Zifeng's eyes were bloodshot as he said viciously, Don't worry, I won't kill you. Nie Tian's lips curled into a smile. He stared at Ning Zifeng strangely and said, I just want to remind you that I miss Ning Ziyu's guard now. As long as I'm by her side, I won't allow anyone to hurt her. Huh? Ning Zifeng's eyes trembled, and his face was filled with shock. How could he not tell that Nie Tian was giving him a warning? Could it be that Nie Tian already knew that he was the one who wanted to kill Ning Ziyu in secret? But how was that possible? He had done it very discreetly. The person who cast the curse on Ning Ziyu's flying steed had already been killed. By right, no one should have known about this. This brat must have made a wild guess. Ning Zifeng forced himself to calm down and thought to himself, Ning Zifeng, it's really you. Nie Tian sneered when he saw Ning Zifeng's reaction. You bastard, you actually wanted to kill your own sister. Just now, Nie Tian wasn't completely sure that Ning Zifeng was the one who wanted to kill Ning Ziyu. But now, Ning Zifeng's reaction told him that Ning Zifeng wanted to kill Ning Ziyu. He couldn't understand why Ning Zifeng wanted to kill his own sister. Ning Zifeng, I've indeed merged with the saint-level life tactic. If you're not convinced, you can come and find me. Then, Nie Tianling sneered. As he said that, he suddenly exerted force in his hand. With a crack, Ning Zifeng's wrist was broken. Ah! Ning Zifeng couldn't bear the pain and let out a strange cry. His handsome face turned hideous. Unbelievable. Nie Tian actually broke his wrist with just the strength of his hand. Ning Zifeng, breaking your wrist is a warning to you. Nie Tian let go of Ning Zifeng and said plainly, Don't provoke me. You're asking for death. Ning Zifeng broke free from Nie Tian and was instantly enraged. He roared and shouted, Where are the dark guards? I'm here. In the next instant, the dark guards of the auction house who had been hiding in the void for a long time appeared one after another. Dozens of warriors in black had extremely powerful auras and released a terrifying and oppressive aura. Kill him. Ning Zifeng seemed to have gone mad. He looked at Nie Tian fiercely and roared. Chapter 3482. Impudence. Boom, boom, boom. The violent aura pressed down on Nie Tian like rolling thunder. Boom. Nie Tian's lips curled into a cold smile. He was not afraid at all. He took a step forward and released a terrifying aura to resist the dozens of dark guards. Bang! The next moment the void shook. After a muffled sound, the dozens of dark guards were forced to retreat. On the other hand, Nie Tian was as steady as a mountain and did not move at all. The sudden scene caused everyone's eyes to widen. They were all staring at Nie Tian as if they had seen a ghost. How was it possible that Nie Tian had single-handedly fought off dozens of hidden guards? One had to know that these dozens of hidden guards were all heavenly rhythm powerhouses. However, in the auction hall, all the martial artists were suppressed by the barrier and their strength was below the godly state. Even so, Nie Tian's aura alone forced dozens of dark guards to retreat was still shocking. At this moment, the people in the auction hall looked at Nie Tian and couldn't help but discuss. Who is this kid? How dare he cause trouble at the auction hall of the Million Treasures Merchant Guild? This kid is so young, but has the strength of the heavenly rhythm realm. I'm afraid he's also a disciple of an aristocratic family. These young masters of aristocratic families are inexperienced. They probably don't know how powerful the Million Treasures Merchant Guild is. How dare they cause trouble here? These people recognized Ning Zifeng and thought that Nie Tian was the troublemaker. A bunch of trash. What are you waiting for? Kill him. Ning Zifeng recovered from the shock and shouted at Nye Tian while pointing at him. Fifth young master, please calm down. At this moment, Yu Rushui came to Ning Zifeng's side and said, This little friend is Miss 19th Guard after all. We are family. What's the point of keeping a servant who disrespects his master? Ning Zifeng was furious and didn't listen to advice. He only wanted to kill Nye Tian. Oomph. Nye Tianling laughed and said directly, Ning Zifeng, I'm afraid I'm not the only person you want to kill. Brat, what do you mean? Ning Zifeng's eyes trembled and his expression changed slightly. I said, the person you want to kill is Miss Ning Ziyu. Nye Tian's expression darkened. Without any hesitation, he said coldly, Nonsense. Ning Zifeng's pupils constricted in shock. Then he became enraged and roared, Secret guard, kill this brat. Yes. Dozens of shadow guards roared in unison. Their auras surged, and they prepared to attack Nye Tian. Nye Tian wasn't afraid in the slightest. If it was under normal circumstances, these hidden guards might be a threat to him. However, under the boundary of the auction house, these hidden guards were like chickens and dogs. Under the enchantment, the hidden guard's strength was suppressed to heavenly emperor realm, while Nye Tian had the strength of a lesser god. It was not an exaggeration to say that Nye Tian could kill all the dark guards in the blink of an eye. Who dares to make a move? However, at this moment, Lung Shuang Wuchen, who had been silent all this while, suddenly spoke. His calm voice resounded in everyone's ears, but was like a sudden clap of thunder, causing everyone to tremble. Nye Tian frowned. Lung Shuang Wuchen's voice contained a powerful spiritual martial technique. It was extremely terrifying. Everyone's eyes trembled as they looked at Lung Shuang Wuchen in horror. No one dared to make a sound. Nye Tian, let's go. Lung Shuang Wuchen didn't want to be entangled with such a person. He spoke calmly and prepared to leave. How dare you? However, at this moment, Ning Zifeng roared and shouted, Is the auction house of the Million Treasures Chamber of Commerce a place where you can come and go as you please? Slap. However, just as he finished speaking, a force pierced through the air and left several clear fingerprints on his face. How dare you? Ning Zifeng's eyes trembled. He looked at Lung Shuang Wuchen in disbelief and growled. Slap. However, before he could finish his sentence, the next slap landed on his face. You? Slap. Ning Zifeng was shocked. He wanted to say something, but he was greeted with a third slap. This time, his eyes were filled with extreme shock. He looked at Lung Shuang Wuchen and didn't dare to make a sound. He couldn't believe that Lung Shuang Wuchen actually dared to slap him in front of so many people. He was the owner of this auction house and a direct descendant of the Million Treasures Chamber of Commerce. Lung Shuang Wuchen humiliated him like this, which was equivalent to provoking the entire Million Treasures Chamber of Commerce. At this moment, everyone's eyes were focused on Lung Shuang Wuchen. Their eyes were filled with shock and fear. Who exactly was Lung Shuang Wuchen? How dare he humiliate a descendant of the Ning family of the Million Treasures Chamber of Commerce? Impudent. Lung Shuang Wuchen looked at Ning Zifeng and said calmly, Go back and ask Ning Jinshi if he dares to speak to me like this. Ning Jinshi was Ning Zifeng's grandfather. He had an extremely high status in the entire Ning family. Since Lung Shuang Wuchen dared to say Ning Jinshi's name in front of everyone, it at least meant that his status was not lower than Ning Jinshi's. Ning Zifeng's eyes trembled slightly, and he didn't dare to speak anymore. Brat, listen carefully. Nye Tian is my friend. I was the one who helped him integrate his life skill. If you dare to touch him, even Ning Jinshi won't be able to protect you. Then, Lung Shuang Wuchen continued. Life skill. Everyone's eyes trembled when they heard Lung Shuang Wuchen's words, and they immediately understood. It turned out that Lung Shuang Wuchen was the owner of that saint-level life skill. How could a person who could take out a saint-level life skill have a low status? Ning Zifeng's eyes trembled, and he couldn't help but glance at Nye Tian with a murderous gaze. He didn't expect that Lung Shuang Wuchen not only sold the life skill to Nye Tian, but also personally helped Nye Tian integrate the life skill. Could it be that Nye Tian's lifeline was more powerful than Ning Zifeng's? At this moment, no matter how stupid Ning Zifeng was, he understood that Nye Tian wasn't Ning Ziyu's guard at all. He must have another terrifying identity. Seems like this guy still wants to kill me. Sensing the murderous intent in Ning Zifeng's eyes, Nye Tian's lips twitched, and he smiled bitterly in his heart. Given Ning Zifeng's personality, it was useless even if Lung Shuang Wuchen threatened him. Let's go. Lung Shuang Wuchen looked at Ning Zifeng and frowned. He didn't say anything else and left immediately. Nye Tian looked at Ning Ziyu and left with her. This time, Ning Zifeng didn't say anything. The dozens of dark guards were like wooden stakes, not daring to move. Ning Zifeng's tensed face only relaxed a little when Nye Tian and the rest disappeared. However, his eyes were still releasing a sinister glint, as if he wanted to eat someone. He was determined to get the life skill in Nye Tian's body. Moreover, Nye Tian knew too many things that he shouldn't know, so he had to die. Even though Lung Shuang Wuchen had warned him, he didn't believe that Lung Shuang Wuchen would dare to come to the Myriad Treasure Chamber of Commerce to kill him if he really killed Nye Tian. He felt that Lung Shuang Wuchen had only met Nye Tian once, and what Lung Shuang Wuchen said just now was just a casual remark. At the same time, outside the auction house, Nye Tian looked at Yu Shui, who came out to send them off. Chapter 3483. Feng Hun Saint Elixir. Young Master Nye Tian, is something the matter? Yu Shui couldn't help but feel alarmed when she saw Nye Tian's strange expression. She bowed and asked. He had met countless people in his life and had long cultivated the ability to socialize smoothly. Previously, he had not paid much attention to Nye Tian, so he had neglected the latter. Of course, he could tell that Nye Tian wasn't just Ning Ziyu's bodyguard. Deacon Yu, I want to ask you about something. Nye Tian smiled faintly and said 4 words, heart-devouring Blackstone. Heart-devouring Blackstone? Yu Shui's eyes could not help but tremble when she heard these words. She was quite surprised. Obviously, he knew about the heart-devouring Blackstone. Deacon Yu knows about the heart-devouring Blackstone? Nye Tian's eyes trembled and were burning with passion. Yu Shui frowned and said in a deep voice, Lord Nye Tian, I've only heard of the heart-devouring Blackstone, but I've never seen it. I only know that it's a token from a certain force. Thank you, Deacon Yu. Nye Tian looked at Yu Shui and felt that the latter seemed to be hiding something. However, he could not force her, so he simply thanked her. Since Yu Shui was unwilling to speak, Nye Tian did not probe further and turned to leave. Young Master Nye Tian. Yu Shui suddenly called out to Nye Tian. What's the matter? Nye Tian turned to look at Yu Shui and smiled faintly. Wolf's Night Mountain. You might be able to find what you want there. Yu Shui's mouth twitched as she transmitted a message to Nye Tian. Then, she turned and left. Wolf's Night Mountain. Nye Tian's eyes narrowed as he memorized this place. Then, Nye Tian and the others left the auction house and soon arrived outside the Million Treasure Mall. Mr. Lung, let's bid farewell here. Nye Tian looked at Lung Shuang Wuchen and said with a smile. Next, he had to continue searching for the Emperor of the Underworld. As the sect master of the Fengtian Fate sect, Lung Shuang Wuchen would definitely not follow him. Moreover, he preferred to travel alone. With Lung Shuang and Wuchen around, he was restricted. Nye Tian, Ning Zifeng will not let you off. You have to be careful from now on. Lung Shuang Wuchen looked at Nye Tian, unable to hide the worry in his eyes. Lung Shuang Wuchen could tell that Ning Zifeng was a vicious and unscrupulous person. He would definitely not give up on killing Nye Tian just because of a threat. I know. Nye Tian smiled and said, Don't worry, Mr. Lung. Although I'm not an expert, I can still protect myself. Lung Shuang Wuchen nodded. He was very confident in Nye Tian. After all, the 7th cultivator of true virtue, Sacred World, was only a primary sacred world, and there weren't many powerhouses there. Even the heavenly mandate sacred masters were rare. With Nye Tian's strength, a mere Ning Zifeng would not be able to do anything to him. At this moment, Lung Shuang Wuchen suddenly looked at Duanmu Lu and the others and asked with a frown, Nye Tian, are these 4 brothers your friends? Nye Tian nodded and forced a smile. Compared to the others, Duanmu Lu and the others were much weaker. I have 3 Fenghan Saint pills here. I can give them to these 3 brothers. Lung Shuang Wuchen smiled faintly. 4 scarlet saint pills appeared in his hand, and he passed them to Nie Tian. What a powerful aura! Nie Tian could sense an extremely terrifying aura from the 4 saint pills. He could not help but be shocked. Nie Tian, this is a saint pill specially made by the Fenghan sect. As long as a cultivator is an overgod, they can consume it. Within a month, they will definitely be able to break through to the saint realm. Lung Shuang Wuchen smiled faintly. Nie Tian frowned when he heard Lung Shuang Wuchen's words and asked in confusion. A saint elixir pill was able to elevate an overgod to the saint realm within a month. This was simply too terrifying. Nie Tian was worried that the Fenghan saint pill might have some side effects. To Duanmu Lu and the others, increasing their strength was important, but it must not affect their martial arts foundation. Nie Tian knew that although some pills could help a cultivator increase their strength in a short period of time, they had to pay the price of draining the cultivator's martial arts talent. Although these pills could increase a cultivator's talent in a short period of time, the cultivator's cultivation speed would be greatly reduced in the future. They might even stagnate. With the talents of Duanmu Lu and the others, it was only a matter of time before they reached the saint realm. Their final destination was not just the heavenly charm hallowed disciple. If the Fenghan Saint pill increased the strength of Duanmu Lu and the others, but harmed their martial arts foundation and martial arts talent, Nie Tian would never let them consume it. Nie Tian, don't worry. The Fenghan Saint pill is a special saint pill of the Fenghan Fate sect. It contains the Fenghan soul of the Fenghan Fate sect's powerhouses. While it can increase a cultivator's cultivation rapidly, it won't harm a cultivator's martial arts foundation at all. Lung Shuang Wuchen could tell what Nie Tian was worried about, so he explained with a faint smile. Mr. Lung, are you sure that the Fenghan Saint pill has no side effects? Nie Tian frowned. He still didn't believe it. There are no side effects, but if these 3 young brothers consume the saint pill, they might suffer a little. Lung Shuang Wuchen nodded and said, after consuming the Fenghan Saint elixir, the warrior's internal organs and limbs will be greatly impacted due to its overwhelming power. It's as if they are being burned by fire. Moreover, the weaker the cultivator, the stronger the impact and the longer it lasts. With their strength, once they consume the Fenghan Saint pill, they will suffer for at least half a month or even longer. Will their lives be in danger? Nie Tian frowned and couldn't help but feel nervous. Lung Shuang Wuchen frowned and said, the impact of the Fenghan Saint pill won't threaten a cultivator's life, but not everyone can endure the continuous pain. If a cultivator's willpower isn't strong enough, they won't be able to endure the continuous torture. In the Fenghan Fate sect, there was once someone who couldn't endure the pain of the Fenghan Saint pill. After consuming the Saint pill, he lost his mind and went crazy. Nie Tian's eyebrows furrowed as his face darkened. It seemed that it was not easy to obtain great power. The Fenghan Saint pill didn't have any side effects, but it carried unbearable pain. Duanmu Lu and the other 3 were very young. The oldest, Duanmu Lu, was only in his 30s, while the youngest, Peng Xiongfei, was not even 20. Back in the plain world, when Nie Tian met Peng Xiongfei, the latter was only a 7-year-old child. Could the 4 of them endure the pain of being burned for half a month at such a young age? Nie Tian, you can keep the 4 Fenghan Saint pills for now. When the time is right, let the 4 of them consume them. Lung Shuang Wuchen nodded and said, it's best to let them consume them after their strength has reached the half-saint level. All right, Nie Tian nodded. The Fenghan Saint pill was a good thing, but it was very dangerous. He would use it carefully. Then, Lung Shuang Wuchen left with Hoodlum without delay. Thank you, Mr. Lung, Nie Tian said to himself as he watched Lung Shuang Wuchen's figure disappear. Chapter 3484. Here comes killing intent. Nie Tian looked at Duanmu Lu and frowned. Duanmu, there's no need for you to take the Beacon Soul Sage pill right now, he said coldly. He knew that one of the reasons Duanmu Lu was so eager to get stronger was because he didn't want to be a burden to Nye Tian. Although Duanmu Lu was already a peak paramount god, it was still too dangerous for him to take the Beacon Soul Sage Pill right now. Lung Shuang Wuchen reminded him that it would be much safer to take it after he was a half-step sage. However, Duanmu Lu looked at Nye Tian with determination and said, "Trust me, Master. Duanmu, you've just become a peak paramount god. I'll think about it after your cultivation stabilizes," Nye Tian replied coolly. His voice wasn't loud, but it was inviolable. He didn't want Duanmu Lu to take any risks. If something happened to him, he would regret it for the rest of his life. "All right," Duanmu Lu said, seeing how determined Nye Tian was. He nodded. At this moment, Nye Tian looked at Ning Ziyu and asked with a frown, "Miss Z, where are you going now?" "How would I know where to go?" Ning Ziyu's eyes flickered. "You took me out of the auction house. You decide where to go next." Nye Tian frowned. He hadn't expected her to say that. "I advise you to go back to the Ning clan. You can't stay in Myriad Treasures Mall," Nye Tian said, looking at her. "Why?" Ning Ziyu frowned, and shock flashed across her pretty face. She said, "Is my fifth brother really going to kill me? Do you think I'm joking?" Nye Tianling laughed. "Why did your scarlet goose go out of control? You saw Ning Zifeng's reaction when I said it out loud, right? You're not an idiot. You should be able to tell the difference." This. Ning Ziyu's face froze, and she was speechless. She didn't dare to believe that her own brother actually wanted to kill her. "Fifth brother, why does he want to kill me?" After a moment, Ning Ziyu's eyes trembled and she asked in a daze. "I'll have to ask you." Nye Tian laughed and said, "Perhaps you blocked his path. Could it be for a spot to enter the 10,000 pagoda?" Ning Ziyu's eyes trembled as she said, "The pagoda will open in 3 months. Our group only has 3 spots. Third brother, ninth brother are the most talented and the strongest, so they will definitely go. There's one last spot left. It's either fifth brother or me. Could it be that fifth brother wants to kill me because of this?" As Ning Ziyu spoke, her sparkling eyes became more and more frightened. When Nye Tian heard her words, he couldn't help but frown. It sounded like the opening of the Myriad Pagoda was very important to the Ning family, but he didn't understand why Ning Ziyu was qualified to go. Compared to Ning Zifeng, Ning Ziyu's talent and strength were far inferior. Ning Zifeng was in the 3rd phase of Heaven Rhythm, while Ning Ziyu was only a peak paramount god. On the other hand, Ning Zifeng had 3 life meridians and had even reached the life pattern level. But Ning Ziyu didn't even have one. With such a huge gap, how could Ning Ziyu compete with Ning Zifeng for the 3rd spot? Nye Tian, this girl isn't as simple as she looks. At this moment, Ghost Emperor's voice rang out with a strange laugh. But then, his voice disappeared. Clearly, he didn't want to talk too much to Nye Tian. Nye Tian frowned. Could it be that Ning Ziyu had some hidden power that he couldn't see through? After a while, Ning Ziyu calmed down a lot. She looked at Nye Tian and said seriously, "Nye Tian, you're my bodyguard now. I've decided to return to the Ning family in 3 months. During this time, you'll be in charge of my safety." Nye Tian frowned, his face grim. He didn't expect Ning Ziyu to be so shameless. He still had things to do. Where would he find the time to protect Ning Ziyu? "It's decided then. Let's go." Ning Ziyu didn't care and said directly. Nye Tian frowned. Just as he was about to say something, the Ghost Emperor said, "Nye Tian, just take this little girl with you. If worst comes to worst, you can put her in the 9 superbs and let her stay there for 3 months. Since she has such a high status, it'll be good for you in the future if you save her." After a moment of pondering, Nye Tian finally nodded. The Myriad Treasures Chamber of Commerce could be considered a big force in the entire sacred world. Maybe in the future, Nye Tian would need their help. "Let's go." Nye Tian let out a long breath and walked out of the Myriad Treasures Mall. Next, he wanted to go to Wolf Knight Mountain. Yuru Shui had just told him that he could find the heart-devouring black stone there. In any case, Nye Tian didn't have a good place to go. He might as well go to Wolf Knight Mountain to try his luck. After everyone left the Myriad Treasures Mall, they immediately headed to Wolf Knight Mountain. Tian had just bought a map of the 7th sacred world of cultivators from the Myriad Treasures Mall. The Night Wolf Mountain was 50,000 kilometers away from the Myriad Treasures Mall, so it would take them a few days to reach the Night Wolf Mountain. Tian, why do you want to go to Wolf Night Mountain? Don't you know that Wolf Night Mountain is a forbidden area of the 7th sacred world of cultivators? I heard from Lord Grandfather that only a few people can return safely from Wolf Night Mountain. When Ning Ziyu heard that Tian wanted to go to Wolf Night Mountain, she couldn't help but ask. Tian frowned and snappily said, "Either you go or you don't. Don't talk so much, okay?" So arrogant. This young lady doesn't want to talk to you. Ning Ziyu curled her lips and really ignored Tian. She turned to talk to Duamu Lu and the others. At this time, Tian's figure suddenly slowed down and a strange smile appeared on his face. "Teacher, what's wrong?" Duamu Lu came to Tian's side and nervously asked. "Someone is chasing after us." Tian faintly smiled. His figure stood in the void, unmoving like a mountain. Whoosh! Whoosh! In the next moment, two figures appeared in the void like streaks of light and instantly descended in front of Tian and the others. "So it's you guys." Tian looked at the two figures and the corner of his mouth slightly raised. The two people who appeared at this moment were not unfamiliar. They were the two people who competed with Tian for the Beacon Heaven Fate art at the auction house. The red-haired cultivator with the divine emperor bloodline and the gloomy young man with the black dragon bloodline. Tian didn't expect that these two guys would chase after him first. It was obvious that they were here for the Beacon Heaven Fate art. "Kid, if you're smart, hand over the Fate art in your body." The red-haired cultivator's face was stern and his eyes were filled with killing intent. "Even if I'm willing to hand over the Fate art, I'm afraid that the people behind you won't be willing." Tian faintly smiled and the corner of his mouth raised into a strange smile. The red-haired cultivator and the gloomy young man were stunned at the same time. They immediately felt a bone-chilling killing intent behind them, causing their expressions to change. Chapter 3485. Kill you first. The red-haired cultivator and the gloomy young man felt the cold, killing intent behind them. Their faces darkened, and they turned around to see a cultivator in black standing behind them. The latter was looking at them with a cold gaze, like a wolf staring at its prey. "You, when did you appear?" The red-haired cultivator looked at the black-robed man with trembling eyes. His teeth were chattering. He didn't notice that there was someone behind him. "Who are you? Why are you following us?" Almost at the same time, the gloomy young man opened his mouth and asked calmly, "You two, one is called Mu Xiong and the other is called Xiao Qi, right?" The black-robed man responded. His eyes were like a dark abyss, incomparably cold. "How did you know?" The two of them exclaimed at the same time. They didn't think that the black-robed man would know their names. The red-haired cultivator was called Mu Xiong, and the gloomy young man was called Xiao Qi. "I know more than that." The black-robed man smiled coldly and said, "Mu Xiong, although you have the divine emperor's bloodline, your family is only a third-rate branch of the divine emperor family. They aren't valued. As for you, Xiao Qi, your black dragon bloodline is considered strong among the dragon warriors. Unfortunately, your family is the evil dragon tribe that was abandoned by the dragon warriors." "Shut up." As soon as the black-clothed man landed, Xiao Qi let out a low roar. Suddenly, an incomparably violent aura was released from behind him. Waves of sharp aura surged out, as if it wanted to devour the entire world in front of him. Xiao Qi suddenly turned around and glared at the black-robed man. He said, "The Black Dragon Tribe does not allow others to interfere." Boom! As soon as he finished speaking, his body released rays of golden light that pierced through the sky like bolts of lightning. Humph! The black-robed man didn't fear Xiao Qi's aura at all. Instead, he sneered and said, "You clearly hate being a member of the evil dragon tribe, but you still pretend to protect it. Xiao Qi, you've lived too long. You're courting death." Xiao Qi's pupils constricted, and he roared. A golden spear appeared in his hand and pierced through the air. Suddenly, a golden bolt of lightning shot towards the black-robed man like a wild dragon. Such powerful strength. Tian's eyes trembled slightly at the sight of this. and he was quite surprised. Needless to say, Shao Qi's strength was indeed formidable. A terrifying aura instantly burst forth from his spear, bringing with it a destructive might. Kill! With a violent roar, a terrifying spear shadow whizzed out from the front of the pure gold factory and attacked the black-robed man. Shao Qi was from the Black Dragon clan, and the Black Dragon clan was the evil dragon clan of the Sage-Rel Dragon clan. What he hated the most in his life was people humiliating the Black Dragon clan. The black-clothed man's words just happened to poke at his sore spot, causing him to instantly go berserk. Very good. In that case, let me experience just how strong a martial genius of the Black Dragon clan is. The black-clothed man sneered, but he was not afraid at all. His body trembled slightly, and suddenly, a ghastly claw appeared behind him, releasing a black murderous aura in the air. The space within 10,000 meters was filled with a suffocating aura. Boom! In the next instant, the ghastly claw slammed down directly towards the golden spear shadow. Kaboom! Instantly, the space trembled as the two terrifying forces clashed against each other. The violent force rumbled endlessly, turning into a terrifying storm that battered the space. Immediately, the black-clothed man and Shao Qi retreated at the same time and stood in the air. They looked at each other as if they were hesitating. Neither of them had expected their opponent to be so strong. Brother Mu, let's kill this man together. At that moment, Shao Qi looked at Mu Xiong and growled. All right. Mu Xiong nodded. He did not like the black-clothed man either. He was extremely angry that the black-clothed man had humiliated his clan, which was a third-rate branch of the divine royal clan. Boom! Mu Xiong took a step forward as a gigantic sword appeared behind him, floating in the air. The surrounding sword will gushed forth, emitting a terrifying pressure. Nie Tian could not help but be surprised when he felt Mu Xiong's aura. Mu Xiong and Shao Qi were definitely martial arts geniuses. Both of them were First Firmament Holy Disciples, but one of them had Third Firmament Sword aura and the other had Third Firmament Spear aura. Therefore, their combat ability was far stronger than ordinary First Firmament Heavenly Aura warriors. The two of them were going to join forces to kill the black-clothed man. Seeing this scene, Nie Tian couldn't help but be stunned. These three people were obviously here to kill him, but they were fighting each other first. What a joke. The black-clothed man was the one who attacked Ning Ziyu at the auction. He had been following Nie Tian and the others ever since they walked out of the Million Treasure Mall. Nie Tian had already engraved his divine soul mark into the 4 divine soul stones, so he knew that he was following them. He just did not say anything. Mu Xiong, Shao Qi, are you sure you want to fight me? The black-clothed man stood in the void, releasing a sinister aura that was violent and sharp. His entire person was like a black storm. His eyes were deep and murderous as he said, "Don't you want to obtain the Saint Rank Life chant? Before we get the life art, we'll kill you first." Shao Qi let out a low roar, his spear aura exploding out. His spear intent was like a bolt of lightning, constantly bombarding the void. "I'll kill you first," Mu Xiong shouted as well. The two of them could tell that the black-clothed man was also coming for Nie Tian. Killing the black-clothed man first would solve a problem. "How dare you? You two ignorant brats. Do you really think I'm afraid of you?" The black-clothed man's eyes darkened and he let out a roar. The aura around his body actually increased crazily. The black murderous aura around his body condensed into a real storm, wrapping around his body like a suit of armor. Suddenly, the surrounding air was filled with a terrifying evil qi. It was so strong that it was suffocating. At this moment, the black-clothed man revealed his true strength. 5th Firmament Holy Disciple. 5th Firmament Heavenly Aura. Mu Xiong and Shao Qi exclaimed at the same time. The two of them did not expect the black-clothed man to have the strength of 5th Firmament Heavenly Aura. Chapter 3486. 2 pieces of trash. Rumble. A violent roar could be heard in the sky. Under the impact of the terrifying storm, the sky changed color and the wind and clouds surged. "Kill! Kill!" Mu Xiong and Shao Qi both felt threatened, but they showed no signs of fear. Instead, They let out a furious roar and lashed out with their swords and spears. A terrifying sword intent and a powerful spear intent were unleashed, suppressing the space around them. Rumble. Waves of terrifying energy collided in the sky. Mu Xiong and Shao Qi both knew that this was a moment of life and death for them. They could not hold back. Rumble, rumble, rumble. In the next moment, the three forces collided and a terrifying shockwave spread out, as if it was going to drown the entire sky. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed, and his sword intent surged out to protect the people around him. These three guys were too terrifying. The terrifying impact in the sky was not something that Duanmu Lu and the others could withstand. Bang! Bang! At this moment, a muffled sound was heard in the sky. Mu Xiong and Shao Qi's figures flew out at the same time and retreated a few thousand meters. At the same time, the man in black was also forced back and stabilized himself a few hundred meters away. It was obvious that the man in black with the cultivation of Heavenly Aura Stage 5 was the stronger one. Even though Shao Qi and Mu Xiong were at the third heaven of Spear Realm and third heaven of Sword Realm respectively, their combined strength was not as strong as a divine disciple at the fifth heaven of Heavenly Aura. The difference in martial strength could be made up with Spear Dao and Sword Dao. It was a pity that Shao Qi and Mu Xiong were not strong enough in terms of Spear Dao and Sword Dao. Two ignorant brats. Do you still want to continue fighting? The black-clothed man suppressed Shao Qi and Mu Xiong, but his face sank as he coldly asked. Shao Qi's face was gloomy, and he did not reply. He knew that even if he and Mu Xiong joined forces, they would not be able to kill the man in black. You didn't come here for us, but for Nie Tian, right? Mu Xiong frowned and looked coldly at the black-clothed man. I came to kill him. The man in black smiled coldly and said, I only want his life. The life incantation on him is yours. The man in black was not aggressive. Instead, he wanted to team up with Shao Qi and Mu Xiong. He was indeed stronger than Shao Qi and Mu Xiong, but he wasn't strong enough to instantly kill them. If they continued to fight, even if the man in black managed to kill Shao Qi and Mu Xiong, he would have to pay a considerable price. Needless to say, the man in black had underestimated Shao Qi and Mu Xiong's strength. Sure, Mu Xiong's eyes narrowed slightly after hearing the black-robed man's words. He agreed without hesitation. And Shao Qi's face darkened as he nodded. On the other hand, Nie Tian's eyes darkened as he exclaimed in surprise. Just a moment ago, these three fellows were still fighting with their lives on the line. Now, they had actually reached an agreement to join forces to kill him. Attack! The black-clothed man suddenly turned around and glared at Nie Tian like a venomous wolf. He roared, and the black storm around his body emitted a terrifying killing chi. Kill! Shao Qi and Mu Xiong moved at the same time, like two raging dragons with murderous intent. They took a step forward, causing the surrounding space to tremble as they charged toward Nie Tian. Bang! Bang! The shadows of the spear were like raging dragons, while the shadows of the sword were like mountains, causing the surrounding space to tremble, as if it was about to collapse. Two terrifying forces pressed down on Nie Tian like thousands of demons dancing wildly. Back off! Nie Tian let out a roar and waved his hand. A powerful sword intent wrapped around Duanmu Lu and the others, sending them to a safe place 10,000 meters away. Bang! At the same time, his sword intent burst forth like a tsunami. In the next moment, Sword Qi soared into the sky. Endless sword intent emanated blinding sword light, making Nie Tian look like an indestructible giant sword of heaven and earth. Kill! The next moment, his eyes flickered and he let out a deep roar, lashing out with the demonic Seven Despair sword. The celestial demon sword intent emitted a terrifying force, causing the surrounding space to be engulfed by a terrifying murderous intent. How is this possible? The black-clothed man's eyes flickered as he exclaimed in his heart, unable to believe his eyes. Nie Tian's strength had greatly exceeded his expectations. He could feel a strong sense of danger from the burst of sword intent. Boom! Bang! Bang! In the next instant, the three forces collided with one another, causing the surrounding space to tremble violently. However, in the blink of an eye, the shadows of the spear and the sword shattered into pieces. Bang! Bang! Following this, two muffled sounds could be heard as Mu Xiong and Shao Qi's figures were sent flying, leaving bloody trails in the sky. The two of them only managed to stabilize themselves after retreating thousands of meters. Then they fixed their eyes on Nye Tian, flabbergasted and flabbergasted. They had attacked at the same time to kill Nye Tian, but their attacks were blocked by him with a single slash. Instead, they were severely injured. How is this possible? Nye Tian was just like them, a first-layer heaven aura cultivator, and Nye Tian's sword Dao was only at the surpassing god ultimacy. He had not even reached the sacred realm. Why was Nye Tian able to unleash such a terrifying sword intent in an instant? Mu Xiong and Shao Qi looked at Nye Tian with trembling eyes, as if they were two little lambs that had just been scared out of their wits. What they didn't know was that Nye Tian had used his full strength in that attack. Nye Tian had only used the most ordinary slash. He had not used the Sky Evolution Sacred Spirit and the Omnigeddon Sacred Spirit in his body. If Nye Tian used the Sky Evolution Sacred Spirit and the Omnigeddon Sacred Spirit, his strength would instantly increase by 10 times. Two pieces of trash. At that moment, the black-clothed man let out a low roar. His eyes were extremely gloomy as he moved his body and charged at them. Bang! Bang! Black Qi soared into the sky from his body, and a terrifying force could be felt. The murderous aura from his body covered an area of 100,000 meters, turning the area into a stormy land. In the next second, the murderous aura from the black-clothed man formed a terrifying demonic figure. It was tens of thousands of meters tall, as if it was a demon that had been released from a bottomless abyss. This, Shao Qi and Mu Xiong's eyes shuddered upon seeing this, as their hearts were filled with astonishment. If the black-clothed man had unleashed such a force, they would have been dead bodies by now. Kill! In the sky, the black-clothed man let out a deep roar. Following this, a pair of demonic hands came crashing down, and an endless amount of murderous aura surged out like a tsunami, as if it was going to destroy the entire place. Good timing. Nye Tian's eyes darkened slightly, and the corner of his lips twitched. It was not fear that appeared in his eyes, but a strong battle intent. Ever since he became a saint, he had yet to truly fight a decent opponent. When he was fighting against Qian Longxia, he did not use his normal strength. Chapter 34:87. Chapter 34:82. Chapter 34:82. Can you escape? Kill. In the air, facing the terrifying black-robed man, the corners of Nye Tian's mouth curled up into a cold smile. He let out a low roar, and suddenly, sword intent crazily surged out of his body. Like a boundless sea, it enveloped the surrounding void. Immediately after, the demon sword of 7 extinction in his hand slashed across the sky. In an instant, an endless amount of sword intent erupted with an endless amount of murderous energy that swept across the sky. Boom! In the void, a gigantic sword shadow appeared like an ancient dragon. It rolled out and suddenly released a sword light that was as bright as the sun. It cut through the darkness in the void and rushed towards the gigantic demon shadow. What a terrifying sword will! Mu Xiong and Shao Qi's eyes trembled as they witnessed the scene before them. The sword will that Nye Tian had just unleashed was way too terrifying. It had completely exceeded their expectations. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he wouldn't have believed that this sword shadow was released by a supreme, profound sword intent. The black-robed man stared at Nye Tian, his eyes trembling. Then, the demonic shadow around his body released a strange light that spread out like ripples. Outside the demonic shadow, a huge armor was formed. Boom! And at this moment, the gigantic sword shadow descended, landing on the gigantic devil shadow. Instantly, the void trembled, as though the entire world had come to a standstill, as though the world was about to be destroyed in an instant. Bang! The moment the gigantic sword shadow descended, it smashed a terrifying hole into the demonic shadow. A piece of the armor shattered, but the sword shadow was unable to move an inch. Although this sword was terrifying, it was still blocked by the demonic shadow. Boom! In the next instant, the demonic figure raised his arm and grabbed the sword shadow with one hand. He exerted force, and the huge sword shadow trembled in the void before shattering into pieces. Boom, boom, boom. Suddenly, a violent force rushed out, forming a terrifying violent storm in the void, spreading in all directions. Bang! A muffled sound rang out. Nietion's figure was sent flying by the violent impact. Good chance. At this moment, Mu Xiong and Shao Qi's eyes shone with a fervent light. With a low roar, their silhouettes moved at the same time. Two terrifying forces gushed towards Nietion. This time, the two of them attacked even more ferociously than before, directly using the power of heavenly rhythm. Boom! As Mu Xiong swung his sword, a gigantic shadow of a sword was unleashed, as if it was going to tear the void apart. Roar! As for Shao Qi's spear, it condensed into a terrifying black dragon in the air. Its roar soared into the sky, causing the surrounding space to tremble. These two fellows really wanted to obtain the sacred rank life secret art. Although the two of them were extremely talented, one was from a third-rate branch of the Divine Emperor family and was not valued by the family, while the other was from the evil dragon tribe that was abandoned by the Sage Realm Dragon tribe. They really needed the saint-level life tactics to increase their strength and prove their worth. However, that sacred world life art had fallen into Nietion's hands. They did not want to kill Nietion, but for the saint-level life tactics, they had no choice but to kill him. In midair, Nietion could feel two terrifying auras rushing towards him, causing his eyes to tremble. Teacher! When Duanmu Lu and the others saw this scene, their eyes trembled and they exclaimed, Nietion! Ning Ziyu's eyes were also trembling as she shouted. Under such circumstances, Nietion would die beyond the shadow of a doubt. Boom! However, at this moment, Nietion's entire body emitted a terrifying sword intent. His sword aura was extremely violent, as if it was going to tear the heavens apart. Mu Xiong and Shao Qi could feel that Nietion's sword intent had increased in quality, causing their eyes to tremble. They could not believe that Nietion's sword intent had increased to an unbelievable level. However, how could a swordsman's sword intent suddenly increase? Since you want to die, then don't blame me. Nietion forcefully stabilized his body with the help of the powerful sword intent. His lips twitched as his eyes emitted a cold, murderous intent. He had used the power of the sky evolution saint spirit to forcefully increase his sword principle to the first heaven of sword aura. Although the first level of sword rhyme and the transcendence ultimacy were only one level apart, the difference between them was like the difference between heaven and earth. They couldn't be mentioned in the same breath. More importantly, Nietion was going to kill Mu Xiong and Shao Qi with the power of his sword aura. Boom! In the next instant, a gigantic sword shadow appeared and a sharp aura filled the air. It was as if the heavens and earth could not withstand its sharpness and were about to be torn apart. Boom! Bang! Bang! Then, the sword shadow swept across everything like a wild dragon. Terrifying sword intent swept through everything in its path. The sword shadow and the black dragon could not withstand the power of the sword shadow and collapsed. This! Mu Xiong and Shao Qi's eyes widened as they screamed in shock. Unfortunately, it was too late. Bang! Bang! As soon as the sword shadow landed, two dull thuds could be heard at the same time. Mu Xiong and Shao Qi's figures fell to the ground like kites with broken strings. They were like two giant rocks smashing into the ground, causing the ground within 10,000 meters to crack open. How could this be? When the man in black saw this scene, his eyes trembled and he cried out in shock. He had never expected that Mu Xiong and Shao Qi's joint attack on Nietion would end up like this. How could Nietion's sword intent unleash such a terrifying force in an instant? Everything felt like a dream. However, The murderous aura in the air made him realize that it was not a dream, but reality. Meanwhile, Ning Ziyu and the others were stunned too, unable to speak for a long time. These two fellows are really tenacious. They actually didn't die. At this moment, Nie Tian's figure was floating high in the sky, looking down. The corners of his mouth twitched as he muttered to himself. He could sense that Mu Xiong and Shao Qi's aura were still there. Even though it was weak, it meant that they were still alive. It seemed like a martial artist who had awakened his life meridian had a stronger life force than an ordinary martial artist. I'll leave their lives to you for now. Then yet Tian's lips twitched as he locked his gaze on the man in black and said in a cold tone, "It's your turn now. You." The man in black's eyes flickered and his face went blank. It was obvious that he was shocked. At this moment, he finally realized how terrifying Nie Tian was. Let's go. There was only one thought in the man's mind, and that was to escape. His figure moved like a ray of light. "Do you think you can escape?" Nie Tian sneered. Sword intent erupted from his body like a volcano eruption. In an instant, boundless sword intent surged out and sealed off the surrounding space. Chapter 3488. Wolf Knight Mountain Boom. High up in the sky, endless sword wolf fell like shackles, instantly locking the black-clothed man. "Don't kill me." The black-clothed man felt a strong sense of oppression coming from the surrounding space. His eyes trembled in horror as he cried out in alarm. At this moment, Nie Tian took a step forward and descended from the sky. His eyes were like the eyes of a lone wolf on a cold night, locked onto the man in black. He said coldly, "Give me a reason not to kill you." This black-clothed man was simply too useless. He was clearly at the 5th level of heaven rhythm, but after Nie Tian's sword intent erupted, he was so scared that he didn't dare to resist. If he released 5 heavenly charm powers at the same time, he would definitely be able to fight Nie Tian head-on. But now, he had become Nie Tian's prisoner. At this moment, as long as Nie Tian willed it, the sword intent in the space will be able to instantly mince the black-clothed man into meat paste. However, it was indeed very dangerous just now. If Nie Tian did not have the celestial evolution saint soul in his body, he would have most likely died at the hands of Mu Xiong and Shao Qi. "Ning Zifeng asked me to kill you. I'm just following orders." The man in black stared at Nie Tian in shock. His eyes were trembling as he spoke loudly. "Anything else?" Nie Tianling sneered. He knew all of this, but it was meaningless to him. "Ning Zifeng even asked me to kill Ning Ziyu." The man in black felt Nie Tian's murderous intent. His eyes trembled as he shouted in shock. "You still have one last chance to speak. If your words mean nothing to me, then I'm sorry." Nie Tian's lips twitched as he spoke coldly. He already knew that Ning Zifeng wanted to kill Ning Ziyu. There was no need for the man in black to remind him. The black-clothed man's face was filled with astonishment and despair, and he paused for a moment before he said, "You're looking for the Heart Devourer Blackstone, right?" Nie Tian frowned and exclaimed in surprise. Then he realized that Yu Shui must have leaked the matter of the heart-devouring Blackstone. Ning Zifeng would definitely interrogate Yu Shui for coming out alone with Nie Tian and the rest. Continue. Nie Tian's lips twitched as he smiled cold. "I have the heart-devouring Blackstone." The black-clothed man's eyes trembled. He hesitated for a long time before saying, "You have the heart-devouring Blackstone?" Nie Tian's eyes lit up and his expression changed. He said in a low voice, "Give it to me." The man in black swallowed his saliva and was about to say something when he suddenly felt the killing intent in Nie Tian's eyes. He immediately did not dare to say anything more and took out a black stone. Heart-devouring Blackstone. Nie Tian looked at the Blackstone and his eyes trembled. This black-robed man really had the heart-devouring Blackstone on him. Then, he waved his hand and snatched the heart-devouring Blackstone from the black-clothed man's hands. Then, he asked with murderous eyes, "Who are you?" It was obvious that the black-clothed man was not from a Myriad's treasure merchant guild. Ning Zifeng was a smart man. If he wanted to kill Ning Ziyu, he would definitely look for someone outside and not someone from the Myriad treasure merchant guild. The black-clothed man should be an assassin hired by Ning Zifeng. What Nie Tian was concerned about was the black-clothed man's true identity. I was hired by Ning Zifeng to kill Ning Ziyu. The black-clothed man's eyes trembled as he said in horror. Cherish the opportunity for you to speak. Nie Tian's eyes were cold. He said coldly, I'm asking you. Who are you? What force do you come from? I can't say. The black-clothed man's eyes shrunk in horror. He was actually unwilling to speak. Wolf's Night Mountain. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed, and he uttered these words in a deep voice. How do you know? The black-clothed man's expression changed drastically when he heard this name, and he shouted in horror. He did not expect Nie Tian to know about Wolf's Night Mountain. You're from Wolf's Night Mountain. Nie Tian's eyes darkened, and the corner of his mouth twitched coldly. He said, Now, I'll give you another chance to speak. Tell me, what's in Wolf's Night Mountain? Wolf's Night Mountain was the name that Yu Rushui told Nie Tian. And now, they were heading to Wolf's Night Mountain. Nie Tian was just bluffing the black-clothed man. He did not expect the black-clothed man to fall for it. It seemed that the force behind the heart-devouring Blackstone was lurking in Wolf's Night Mountain. Nie Tian wanted to know the name of this force. I can't say. The black-clothed man's expression was aghast, and he still refused to speak. Since that's the case, I can only send you away. Nie Tian frowned, and the corner of his mouth twitched cold. Then, with a thought, the sword essence in the void suddenly became violent. A terrifying, strangling force poured into the black-clothed man's body. Bang! In the next moment, the black-clothed man did not even have time to scream before he exploded into a pool of blood in the air. Nie Tian did not want to waste time on the black-clothed man. He would find out what was in Wolf's Night Mountain sooner or later. After killing the black-clothed man, Nie Tian kept the heart-devouring Blackstone and looked to the ground. Mu Xiong and Shao Qi's aura had disappeared. It seemed that the two of them had escaped. He did not chase after them. They were just two ants and did not pose a threat to him. Nie Tian, are you all right? At this moment, Ning Ziyu came to Nie Tian's side. Her beautiful eyes were trembling and her voice was trembling. She did not expect Nie Tian's combat ability to be so terrifying. I'm fine. Nie Tian smiled faintly and said, Let's go. Ning Ziyu looked at Nie Tian and was speechless for a long time. Then, the group did not delay and continued their journey towards Wolf's Night Mountain. 3 days later, an endless mountain range appeared in front of Nie Tian and the group. Is this Wolf's Night Mountain? Ning Ziyu looked at the endless mountain range in front of her with a shocked expression. Duanmu Lu and the others were so shocked that they could not speak. They did not expect Wolf's Night Mountain to be so vast. They could not see the end of the mountain range at a glance. Nie Tian frowned slightly, and his expression did not look good. He realized that the entire Wolf's Night Mountain seemed to be shrouded in a strange aura. The existence of this aura made the entire mountain range look like it was shrouded in a thick fog. This aura did not threaten Nie Tian. It only made him feel disgusted. After a while, Ning Ziyu calmed down and frowned at Nie Tian. Nie Tian, this Wolf's Night Mountain is so big. What are we doing here? The corner of Nie Tian's mouth twitched as he said, I'm looking for someone. Find someone? Ning Ziyu's beautiful eyes trembled. She let out a strange cry and asked, This mountain range is so big. Who are you looking for? Someone very important to me. Nie Tian did not want to say too much to Ning Ziyu. He smiled faintly and locked his eyes on a small city on the outskirts of the mountain range. The city was actually not small. It seemed to have a circumference of about 1,000 miles, but it was a little small compared to the Million Treasures Mall. Let's take a look at that city first. Nie Tian smiled faintly and prepared to take a look at the city first. Night Wolf Mountain was too big, and without any understanding of the mountain, it was too dangerous to rashly enter. However, at that very moment, Nie Tian suddenly sensed that a few repulsive auras had appeared. Chapter 3489. Forest Wolf City. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed when he saw the cultivators in black. These people had ferocious gazes and baleful looks on their faces. The killing intent on their bodies was very heavy. Kids, Wolf Night Mountain is a dangerous place. It's not a place you can come to. At this moment, One of the cultivators in black grinned and stared at Ning Ziyu greedily and wretchedly. "Kid, leave this little girl behind. You can take the others and scram." The other black-clothed cultivator, who had a slanted scar on his face, smiled coldly and said to Nietian, "The scar on his face must have been caused by something special. Otherwise, it wouldn't have left a mark." Nietian's face darkened. So these shameless people had their eyes on Ning Ziyu. From the looks of it, these people were definitely not good people. Moreover, they had a strong smell of blood on them and a strong murderous aura. Nietian. Ning Ziyu felt uncomfortable being stared at by these people and subconsciously leaned toward Nietian. She was really worried that Nietian would leave her alone. After all, she wasn't familiar with Nietian. They could even be considered strangers. Nietian's eyes darkened and the corner of his mouth twitched coldly. Of course, he wouldn't leave Ning Ziyu alone. He would keep Ning Ziyu by his side and ensure her safety. Even if she was a stranger, Nietian wouldn't just stand by and watch. "What if I don't?" Nietian laughed and looked at the scar-faced cultivator with a playful expression. There were a total of 4 cultivators in front of him. 3 of them were at the first level of heavenly rhythm. The scar-faced cultivator was slightly stronger, but he was only at the 2nd level. Nietian wasn't afraid of these 4 people. "Kid, if you want to be a hero and save the damsel in distress, you have to weigh your own strength." The scar-faced cultivator sneered and said, "You've just stepped into the heavenly rhythm realm, right? Do you think you can fight against the 4 of us? Any one of these 3 brothers of mine can easily kill you. Is that so?" The corners of Nietian's mouth twitched. He raised his eyebrows, and his face was filled with disdain. "Big brother, it seems like this kid doesn't know what's good for him." A black-clothed cultivator looked at Nietian and said with a cold smile, "I will make a move and send you off." "Sure." Nietian smiled faintly. His expression was so calm that it made people's hair stand on end. Courting death. The black-clothed cultivator was thoroughly enraged by Nietian. He roared and took a step forward. Suddenly, a terrifying aura burst forth, followed by the appearance of the power of fire, which turned into a sea of fire in the void and pressed down on Nietian. Pooh! However, at this moment, a murderous sword intent whistled through the air. It was extremely sharp and pierced through the sea of fire. That black-robed cultivator felt an oppressive aura approaching. Then, a sword light flashed before his eyes. Before he could react, his throat was pierced. "You!" The black-clothed cultivator's eyes trembled as he looked at Nietian. He exclaimed in horror, but he didn't have the strength to say anything else. His body trembled, and he fell down like a kite with a broken string. 4th brother. The scar-faced cultivator's eyes trembled violently before he reacted and shouted in horror. Everything that had happened just now had happened in the blink of an eye. He had only seen Nietian move slightly, and then his companion had been killed. He didn't even see how Nietian made his move. The horrifying scene was like a dream. At this time, the other black-clad cultivators also came to their senses. They all looked at Nietian with horrified expressions. Obviously, they were all frightened by Nietian. "It's time for you to make your move," Nietian said in a cold tone as he smiled faintly, his eyes sweeping over the scar-faced cultivators. "Brat, you—" The scar-faced cultivator's eyes trembled, and he couldn't help but take a few steps back. He originally thought that Nietian was just a young master of an aristocratic family. He didn't expect Nietian to be so strong. "If you don't make your move, then it's my turn." Nietian smiled sinisterly and took a step forward. Sword intent surged all over his body. It seemed to be restrained, but it was actually extremely sharp. It seemed like it would tear the void in the next moment. "You!" The scar-faced cultivator felt the terrifying aura hidden in Nietian's body. His eyes trembled involuntarily, and he couldn't say anything. "I didn't provoke you. You're the ones who are seeking death." Nietian smiled coldly. The sword intent around his body became extremely sharp and terrifying. "Brat, we are from the 7 Wolves mercenary group. If you dare to kill us, the 7 Wolves mercenary group will not let you off." The The Scarface cultivator felt Nietion's murderous intent and panicked. It's too late to say that now. With a cold laugh, Nietion moved. Like a streak of light, he left behind a blood-colored light wherever he went. The three black-clothed men were killed by Nietion in the blink of an eye without any resistance. They couldn't understand how Nietion, who was only at the first stage of heavenly aura, could be so terrifying. You are not weak, but it's a pity that you have provoked someone you shouldn't have. Nietion smiled faintly and restrained his sword intent, as if nothing had happened. He was only at the first stage of heavenly aura, but if he activated the celestial evolution Saint Spirit and the omniscient Saint Spirit, he could at least fight against a sixth-stage heavenly aura martial artist, or even stronger. After all, not long ago, he had personally killed a fifth-stage heavenly aura martial artist. These four mercenaries were truly unlucky to have provoked Nietion, a fiendish star. Nietion, how can you be so strong? Ningxiu came to Nietion's side and couldn't help but ask. Nietion was only at the first stage of heavenly aura, so how could he easily kill opponents of the same level? I'm talented. Nietion smiled and said, let's go to the small city first. Then, they arrived at the small city outside the Wolf's Night Mountain. The Forest Wolf City. Nietion's eyes narrowed as he looked at the small city, and a playful smile appeared on his face. Although he had yet to enter the city, he could smell an extremely strong, murderous aura from the city. Nietion, this city looks so gloomy. Are we really going to enter? Ningxiu also felt the murderous intent and asked with trembling eyes. MHM. Nietion nodded and walked towards the city gate. This city was different from other cities. There were no city guards, and everyone could enter and exit freely. After entering the city, Nietion immediately felt that the murderous intent in the air was even stronger. It was as if the entire city was filled with a strong smell of blood. That smell of blood was suffocating. Teacher, there's something wrong with this city. Duanmu looked around cautiously and secretly transmitted his voice to Nietion. MHM. Nietion nodded slightly and didn't say anything. After a while, they arrived at the city and there were more and more people around them. Nietion noticed that everyone's eyes were gloomy and filled with murderous intent. Nietion's face was gloomy and he secretly reminded the others to follow him. Ningxiu and the others approached Nietion but didn't dare to go too far. Chapter 3490. The Killing Rules, Teacher. Duanmu also noticed that something was wrong and secretly transmitted his voice to Nietion. I know, Nietion responded. His eyes narrowed and his expression turned ugly. At this time, the surrounding people slowly dispersed, distancing themselves from Nietion and the others. Then, four masked martial artists in black arrived. Each of them released a powerful aura and surrounded Nietion and the others. Nietion. Ningxiu couldn't help but panic and tightly leaned against Nietion. I'm here, don't be afraid, Nietion said lightly, then glanced at the four masked martial artists and asked, what can I do for you? One of the masked martial artists, who seemed to be the leader of the four, stepped forward and asked in a deep voice, are you guys new here? Nietion nodded and secretly spread out his divine sense. He scanned the four masked martial artists and found that they were all at the third level of heavenly charm. After all, the seventh sacred world of cultivators was only a primary sacred world. The strength of the martial artists here was generally not strong. Occasionally, a heavenly mandate martial artist would appear, but that was already considered very strong. The masked martial artist sneered and asked coldly, Kid, don't you know the rules of Forest Wolf City? What rules? Nietion was stunned for a moment and asked with a frown. Ha ha ha. The masked martial artist's wolf-like eyes flickered. He laughed and said, Kid, you don't know the rules of Forest Wolf City, yet you still dare to enter. Are you sure you're not courting death? As soon as his words fell, the surrounding crowd suddenly burst into laughter. Ha ha, this kid doesn't know anything, yet he still dares to come to Forest Wolf City. What idiot. Swaggering into Forest Wolf City like this. What does he think this place is? The entire Night Wolf Mountain is a forbidden area of the seventh sacred world of cultivators. Forest Wolf City is the gate of Night Wolf Mountain. How can outsiders casually enter? As everyone spoke, they looked at Niet Tion as if they were looking at an idiot. At this moment, in their eyes, Niet Tion was an idiot. Niet Tion's gaze swept across the crowd, and his face was incomparably gloomy. Kid, let me tell you, the Forest Wolf City is known as the City of Slaughter. Every single person here has blood on their hands. At this moment, the masked martial artist spoke again and said in a deep voice, Forest Wolf City is not a place for you aristocratic children to train. Niet Tion frowned, and his face darkened. It seemed like these people treated him as a disciple of an aristocratic family who came out to gain experience. Forest Wolf City doesn't welcome strangers. The masked martial artist stared at Niet Tion with a gloomy gaze and said, If you want to stay in Forest Wolf City, then you must abide by the rules here. What rules? Niet Tion frowned and asked again. Rules for killing. The masked martial artist smiled cold and said, Anyone who enters Forest Wolf City must kill one person. What do you mean? Niet Tion frowned and couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. He didn't quite understand. It's very simple. Since the 5 of you have come to Forest Wolf City, you must kill 5 people from Forest Wolf City. This way, the number of people in Forest Wolf City will not increase or decrease, the masked cultivator said with a cold smile. Niet Tion's eyes narrowed as he finally understood. It turned out that this so-called killing rule was for people who entered Forest Wolf City to kill other people from Forest Wolf City. For example, when Niet Tion's group of 5 came to Forest Wolf City, they must kill 5 people from Forest Wolf City. Only then would they be able to stay in Forest Wolf City. This rule was a bit strange. It was simply forcing people to kill. Kid, it's not too late to make a move now. At this time, the masked martial artist smiled coldly and swept his gaze across the crowd. You can kill these people who are looking at you as long as you can. When the crowd heard the masked martial artist's words, they couldn't help but tremble. Many people's faces were filled with fear, and they couldn't help but take a step back. Most of the people present were martial artists below the Sage Realm. Only a small portion of them were at the Heavenly Yun Realm. Even the Holy World, not everyone had the strength to advance to the Sage Realm. Only martial artists with outstanding talent could reach the Sage Realm. What if I don't kill? The corner of Niet Tion's mouth twitched as he looked at the masked martial artist in front of him and asked with a smile, If you don't kill, then you can only be killed. The masked martial artist smiled cold, and the murderous intent in his eyes intensified. It was obvious that if Niet Tion didn't kill others, he would directly kill Niet Tion. You can try. Niet Tion smiled faintly, but the corner of his mouth was raised with a cold, murderous intent. He didn't want to kill others, but if these masked martial artists wanted to kill him, he wouldn't be polite. Kid, do you want to fight us? The masked martial artist smiled coldly, and his eyes were filled with murderous intent. I won't kill others, but if you want to kill me, I don't mind killing you. Niet Tion smiled faintly and said, After all, you are also people of Forest Wolf City. You're courting death. The masked martial artist was completely enraged. With a low roar, his aura suddenly surged, and the power of a third-layer Heavenly Yun Holy Disciple surged into the surrounding void. So strong. The surrounding people exclaimed in shock and retreated one after another. You think I'm afraid of a third-layer Heavenly Yun cultivator? Niet Tion smiled coldly. He wasn't afraid at all. Instead, he took a step forward, and the bluestone ground under his feet collapsed. I'll kill you. The masked martial artist was enraged. With a roar, he struck out with his palm. Suddenly, an endless amount of power was released from the void and condensed into a terrifying palm shadow that pressed down on Niet Tion. Niet Tion frowned, and his expression changed slightly. His eyes were filled with coldness. Boom! In the next instant, his entire body's aura exploded. A huge sword aura shot up into the sky like a giant dragon, extremely violent. Bang! Then the sword shadow appeared and shattered the palm shadow. Then it pressed down on the masked martial artist. In an instant, the masked martial artist felt a terrifying power rushing towards him. His eyes trembled and he screamed in fear. However, In the next moment, the sword's shadow fell and his body was engulfed by it. Not even his bones were left. The eyes of the crowd trembled violently. Their faces stiffened and were petrified on the spot. The scene fell into a dead silence. The air was filled with the stench of blood. Who would have thought that such a young martial artist would have such terrifying strength that he could kill a third-layer heavenly yun cultivator in an instant? Nietion's strength could be said to be world-shocking. Only after long, while did the crowd snap back to their senses. Fear filled their eyes as they looked at Nietion. Nietion's face was calm as a cold smile appeared on his face. This masked martial artist's strength was the same as Mu Xiong and Shao Qi's, but his combat strength was far weaker than theirs. After all, Mu Xiong and Shao Qi were genius martial artists who had awakened their lifeline. Chapter 3491. The entire city shook. The masked martial artist stared at Nietion with a panicked expression on his face. He could not believe that someone dared to kill a forest wolf guard in Forest Wolf City. At this moment, the crowd looked at Nietion and seemed to recall something. Their expressions were filled with panic. Oh no, this kid killed a forest wolf guard. The forest wolf guards are the guards of Forest Wolf City. This kid might not know how much trouble he has gotten himself into. I've stayed in Forest Wolf City for tens of thousands of years. This is the first time I've seen someone kill a forest wolf guard. He's just a guard. So what if he killed him? Nietion looked at the other forest wolf guard. When he heard the crowd's discussion, the corner of his mouth twitched a little, as if he didn't think much of it. Kid, you're dead. The forest wolf guard looked at Nietion. Although he had a ferocious expression, he did not dare to step forward. Instead, he retreated. Is that so? Nietion chuckled with a gloomy expression. Blow the forest wolf horn. At this moment, the forest wolf guard looked at the other forest wolf guard behind him and shouted. The other forest wolf guard's eyes trembled. He immediately reacted and took out a black horn and blew it. Woo! The forest wolf horn sounded like the howl of a wolf. It was deep and distant and instantly spread across the entire Forest Wolf City. At the same time, all the Forest Wolf guards in Forest Wolf City heard the sound of the horn. Boom! 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 In the next moment, one terrifying aura after another rose into the sky and shot towards the location where Nietion and the others were. Nietion frowned as his expression flickered. He saw figures in black appearing in the void around him. It was as if dark clouds were surging in the sky and pressing down on him. The crowd was shocked and panicked when they saw this. The forest wolf horn was blown, indicating that the entire city was under martial law. This time, all the guards of Forest Wolf City were here. Teacher, Duanmu Lu's eyes couldn't help but tremble, and he couldn't help but panic. Don't panic, Nietion replied calmly, his face determined. He really did not expect that the death of a forest wolf guard would actually alarm the entire Forest Wolf City. A moment later, countless figures in black appeared in the surrounding void. They were all forest wolf guards. At a glance, there were at least 8,000 of them. And these forest wolf guards were all heavenly charm experts. Nietion frowned slightly. A tiny forest wolf city actually had so many heavenly charm realm powerhouses. This was out of his expectations. At this moment, he could clearly feel the terrifying pressure in the air. With so many heavenly rhythm experts, just the aura they emitted was already very terrifying. Nietion released the sword intent in his body to protect Ning Ziyu, Duanmu Lu, and the others. Without his protection, Ning Ziyu and the others would not have been able to withstand the pressure in the void. Nietion squinted his eyes and looked into the void with an ugly expression. He was indeed too careless this time. He was surprised that the death of a forest wolf guard could cause such a huge commotion. But facing the scene before him, he wasn't too worried. Although the aura of these forest wolf guards was very strong, if they really fought to the death, Nietion still had a chance to escape. How many years has it been? The forest wolf bugle horn has sounded again. At this moment, a deep voice came from the void. It was extremely cold and emitted a chilly, killing intent. Then, a gray-robed elder appeared and stood in the void. His aura was like a mountain, majestic and powerful. His eyes were fixed on Yetion, and he said cold, I didn't expect the person who killed the forest wolf guard to be a brat who's still wet behind the ears. Looks like the forest wolf guards, who haven't experienced a war for many years, have been at ease for too long. Who are you? Yetion looked at the gray-robed elder and asked in a deep voice. I am the deputy city lord of Forest Wolf City, Lu Lianshan. The gray-robed elder, Lu Lianshan, said in a deep voice, And who are you, brat? It seemed that Lu Lianshan was afraid of something and was very careful. I'm Yetion. I've just arrived at Forest Wolf City and don't know the rules of Forest Wolf City. If I've offended you in any way, please forgive me, City Lord Lu, Yetion said in a deep voice as he saw Lu Lianshan's fear. Offended? Forgive? Lu Lianshan laughed and said, Yetion, do you think you can forgive me for killing the guards of Forest Wolf City? Do you know that in the hundreds of thousands of years since the establishment of Forest Wolf City, no Forest Wolf guard has ever died in Forest Wolf City? If you want me to forgive you, then how will I explain to the 8,000 Forest Wolf guards behind me? Yetion frowned, and his face darkened. It seemed that the Forest Wolf guards were very united. This kind of unity did not seem like a guard, but more like an army. Soldiers and martial artists were the most sentimental. They trusted each other very much and could entrust their lives to each other. The death of a Forest Wolf guard alarmed the entire Forest Wolf City. It was indeed the style of an army. Yetion, you will definitely die today, Lu Lianshan said in a cold voice. His eyes were filled with killing intent. City Lord Lu, aren't you afraid that I'm from a major clan? Yetion's eyes narrowed slightly as he asked indifferently. Yetion, it seems that you don't understand Forest Wolf City and Wolf Night Mountain at all. Lu Lianshan smiled cold and said, You killed a Forest Wolf guard. Even if you're from a major family, you won't be able to escape death today. Yetion heard Lu Lianshan's words and could not help but narrow his eyes. In his opinion, the entire Forest Wolf City was not very strong, but Lu Lianshan did not seem to care too much. It seemed that there was a major power supporting the Forest Wolf City from behind. City Lord Lu, I'm sorry. I don't plan on dying here. At this moment, Yetion smiled faintly, the corners of his mouth curling up into a strange smile. Boom! In the next instant, his entire body surged with a powerful sword intent, soaring up to the 9 heavens. The sharpness of the sword intent seemed as though it wanted to slash apart the 9 heavens. Lu Lianshan's eyes trembled as his expression sank. He did not expect that Yetion would still choose to forcefully rush out in the face of so many Forest Wolf guards. At this moment, Yetion's silhouette flickered as he activated the 9 extreme levels. Ningxiu and the rest disappeared, after which a pair of astral soul wings appeared on his back. Like a giant bird, he soared up into the sky, charging towards the Forest Wolf guards. Stop him! Lu Lianshan's eyes darkened as killing intent flashed in his eyes. Chapter 3492. Forest Wolf Boundary, huh? Yetion, who was in midair, suddenly felt a terrifying suppressive force. His eyes darkened and his expression changed. In an instant, he felt a frightening spirit power enveloping him from all directions like a giant invisible hand, completely trapping him. In an instant, the space around him was sealed and he felt powerless. He had never imagined that the Forest Wolf guards would actually be able to form such a terrifying barrier in an instant. The power of the boundary covered the sky and earth, and there was no way to avoid it. Boom! In the next moment, the ward suddenly trembled, and a terrifying force was unleashed from the void, condensing into a huge, murderous wolf, which pounced towards Yetion with ferocious force. Oh no! Yetion immediately felt a strangling aura coming at him, causing his pupils to shrink, and he couldn't help but cry out in alarm. He could feel that the giant wolf contained a terrifying power. If he was hit directly, even he would be seriously injured. Celestial Evolution Saint Spirit, open. In an instant, Yetion reacted, and the Celestial Evolution Saint Spirit in his body released the Celestial Evolution Saint power, causing the sword within his body to soar to the maximum. The swift and fierce sword intent was like numerous sharp blades that forcefully tore apart the confined space in the surroundings. Sacred heaven-defying sword. Sky sword reverses the sun. In the next instant, Niet Tion roared and slashed out with his sword. The violent sword shadow was like a mad dragon that rushed towards the giant wolf. Boom! Boom! Then, the two terrifying forces collided, and it was clear who was stronger and who was weaker. Niet Tion's sword shadow could not block the giant wolf and collapsed. Roar! In the next instant, the giant wolf let out a low growl in the void and pounced towards Niet Tion. Bang! At the critical moment, Niet Tion activated the shield of the Star Soul. There was a muffled sound in the void, and his body was hit by the giant wolf. He fell to the ground like a meteorite. Boom! A deafening rumble echoed out as a huge crater appeared in the ground. Niet Tion's body sank deep into it. The power of the giant wolf was too terrifying. Even if Niet Tion activated the Sky Evolution Saint Soul sword, he still could not block it. However, that sword had blocked the giant wolf's attack and greatly weakened its offensive power. Niet Tion stood up. There were several wounds on his body, but his aura was still sharp. He was not seriously injured. How is this possible? At this time, Lu Lianshan looked at Niet Tion, and his eyes couldn't help but tremble. He cried out in shock, and his eyes trembled. His face was filled with disbelief. He had never imagined that Niet Tion could actually break through the enchantment's control. The barrier was so powerful that even a 9-stage heavenly charm cultivator might not be able to break it. And Niet Tion was only at the first level of Heaven Yin. How could he break it? It seems that I've underestimated you. At this time, Niet Tion said in a low voice. He stomped on the ground, and his silhouette shot up into the sky. His eyes were like the eyes of a venomous wolf. Niet Tion, your strength has astonished I, Lu Lianshan said in a cold tone. His eyes twitched a few times. Niet Tion let out a cold laugh and said, Is that so? You'll soon see something that will amaze you even more. As soon as he finished speaking, Niet Tion's eyes darkened as he stared at the giant wolf in the sky. Roar! The giant wolf seemed to have smelled the killing intent coming from Niet Tion. It let out a low growl and immediately moved. Like a small mountain, its whole body emitted a terrifying, evil aura. Good! Niet Tion's eyes narrowed slightly, and the sword aura he emanated became even more terrifying. Waves of terrifying sword intent formed a storm of sword intent around him, as if they were going to tear everything in their path apart. Lu Lianshan's eyes widened. He couldn't believe his eyes. Niet Tion's sword intent skyrocketed once again. He was wondering why Niet Tion's sword intent skyrocketed all of a sudden. But now, Niet Tion's sword intent skyrocketed for the second time. He was not a swordsman, so he couldn't see through Niet Tion's sword realm. But he knew that a swordsman's sword intent would only fluctuate slightly. It was too strange for Niet Tion's sword intent to skyrocket twice in a row. He could feel that two terrifying forces had awakened in Niet Tion's body. Niet Tion had activated the Sky Evolution Saint Spirit and the Myriad Calamity Divine Spirit at the same time. His sword realm had reached the third layer sword aura realm. Die! In the next moment, Niet Tion let out a bellow and made his move. His sword intent filled the entire sky, sweeping everything in its path. In the next moment, a terrifying sword shadow cut through the air and shot towards the giant wolf like an enormous waterfall. Boom! Bang, bang, bang. Following that, under the countless gazes, the sword image powerfully landed on the huge wolf's body. The air trembled, and after that, the huge wolf's body was actually unable to withstand the attack. With a loud bang, the huge wolf's body collapsed, turning into numerous spirit formation runes that dissipated in the air. Lu Lianshan was dumbfounded by the scene in front of him. His eyes trembled, and he was speechless. A martial artist at the first level of the Heavenly Charm realm actually destroyed the boundary forest wolf. Was he dreaming? Niet Tion was right. Lu Lianshan was even more amazed by the strength he had just displayed. Goodbye. At this moment, a cold smile appeared at the corner of Nietion's mouth. The wings on his back suddenly flapped, and he abruptly accelerated, soaring high into the sky. Boom! In midair, he released a huge amount of dragon aura. A terrifying sea of dragon aura appeared behind him. Suddenly, the dragon aura and the power of lightning surged in the air, as if they were going to devour the heaven and earth. Dragon aura! Lu Yinshan's eyes trembled as he shouted in shock. He had never expected that Nietion's body contained such a huge amount of dragon aura. Dragon aura was the most fearful of dragon aura. Dragon aura itself could greatly weaken space. Normally, a barrier was formed by confining a piece of space. It was obvious that Nietion was well-versed in this. At that moment, he was going to use the dragon aura to break the barrier. As long as he could break the barrier, he would be able to escape. Don't let him touch the barrier. In an instant, Lu Yinshan reacted and shouted in alarm. But it was too late. Roar! A giant red dragon appeared in Nietion's body. With a roar, the power of lightning surged in the air and charged at the barrier. Kaboom! In the next moment, the giant dragon charged at the barrier. A huge amount of dragon aura exploded, and a hole was created on the barrier. Oh no! Lu Yinshan's eyes trembled. The fear in his heart was written all over his face. Do you think you can leave just like that after killing the people of my forest wolf city? However, at that moment, a deep and murderous voice sounded in the air. Then a black silhouette appeared, standing in the air like a giant mountain. City Governor. Lu Yinshan's eyes lit up when he saw the figure in black. Chapter 3493. Forest Wolf Curse. Seal Lu Yinshan saw the black-clothed man high in the sky. His eyes instantly became fiery, and he shouted in surprise. He did not expect that the city lord of the Forest Wolf City would appear in person at this critical moment. Nietion looked at the black-clothed man who suddenly appeared and felt the violent aura of the latter. His eyes couldn't help but tremble, and he was very shocked. The black-clothed man was not tall, and he was even a little short. However, the aura of his body was very terrifying, and the terrible power impacted the void, as if it was going to tear the world apart. The strength of this person was far above the Forest Wolf Guards. He was definitely a heavenly mandate realm warrior. Rush out! But at this time, Nietion did not care too much. His eyes slightly darkened, and with a low roar, he rushed toward the gap in the barrier. He had to rush out of the barrier. This was his only chance of survival. Stay here. At the same time, the city lord of the Forest Wolf City roared and slammed his hand down. Suddenly, the void around him sank, as if the whole world was about to collapse. In the next moment, a huge handprint appeared, rolling up the dark clouds in all directions and pressing down on Nietion. Nietion's eyes slightly narrowed, and then his expression changed. The strength of the city lord of the Forest Wolf City was too strong, far beyond his expectations. The city lord is coming personally. This kid can't escape. Lu Yinshan saw this scene, and his eyes slightly trembled. The corner of his mouth twitched, and he murmured. Even if Nietion could break the Forest Wolf barrier, there was no way he could escape from the city lord of the Forest Wolf City. Fight! At this time, Nietion's eyes suddenly darkened. He roared in his heart, and then the 9 heavenly shackles in his body were directly released. Whoosh! The 9 shackles, like 9 giant snakes, crazily rushed in the void, blasting toward the huge handprint. The city lord of the Forest Wolf City saw that Nietion dared to rush over, and his eyes turned cold, and he said coldly, "Little ant, don't overestimate yourself." He absolutely did not believe that a mere first-tier heavenly charm holy disciple could compete with him, a first-tier heavenly mandate realm saint master. Saint and sacred expert. The difference of a single word was like the difference between heaven and earth. Nietion was an entire major realm away from him. Even if he had heaven-defying talent, he was absolutely unable to contend with him head-on. Bang! Just at this moment, the 9 heavens Tao shackles gathered together like a sharp awl that slammed against that gigantic palm print. The void rumbled. However, that palm print merely froze for a moment, without being damaged in the slightest. The difference in strength between the first level of Heavenly Yin and the first level of Heavenly Mandate was too great. Even the power of the Way of Heaven could not make up for this difference. Accept your fate, Ant. The Cold City Lord laughed coldly. His hand floated in the air and abruptly pressed down, causing the gigantic palm imprint to sink down. A thunderous sound rang out as the 9 heavenly Tao shackles were shattered by the impact. However, at this moment, the corner of Nie Tian's mouth twitched and a sinister smile appeared on his face. He murmured, Nie Tian, only recognize myself, not fate. As soon as he finished speaking, his right eye suddenly trembled, and suddenly, the extreme demon-destructive seal appeared. Then, a terrifying eye power surged out and condensed into an eye power blade in the air. The eye power blade was extremely sharp. The heavenly Tao shackles were only used to affect that gigantic palm print. The extreme demon-destructive seal was the real power used to break that palm print. Up in the sky, the Sunlang City Lord could not help but let out a cry of surprise when he felt a terrifying wave of eye power. Bang! At that moment, a dull thud could be heard as a gap with a radius of a few meters appeared on the giant palm print. Following this, a blade made of eye bloodline power whizzed out and slashed toward the City Lord of Sunlang City. Puff! The Sunlang City Lord's eyes froze slightly, and he instantly reacted by moving his body to the side. The eye power blade flew past his face and left a bloody wound on his face. The wound was so deep that the bone could be seen, and half of his face was dyed red. The shocking scene made Lu Yinshan's eyes tremble. He let out a strange cry, but he was unable to say anything. The expressions of the others also changed, and they were all stunned. No one had expected such a scene to unfold. At this moment, a figure dashed out from the gap on the gigantic palm print. A pair of glittering wings appeared on his back, and with a flap, he turned into a ray of light and dashed toward the sky. Damn it! The Sunlang City Lord's expression sank as he reacted. His eyes were bloodshot like those of a venomous wolf, and he let out a deep roar like a wild beast. However, at this moment, Nie Tian's figure was already several tens of thousands of meters away. The Sunlang City Lord never imagined that Nie Tian would be able to break through his palm print. How could a first-level heavenly rhythm martial artist have such powerful strength? You want to leave after killing my Sunlang guards? In your dreams. The next moment, the Sunlang City Lord's pupils contracted, and his entire body became extremely evil. An extremely dark power was being released from his body. Sunlang Curse Seal. Lu Yinshan's eyes trembled when he saw this scene from afar, as if he had seen something extremely terrifying. He exclaimed, "Lord City Lord, don't be rash." However, it was too late. The Sunlang City Lord's eyes instantly changed. They were no longer a pair of human eyes, but a pair of wolf eyes. At the same time, his face changed as well. In an instant, it turned into the face of a wolf. To be more precise, this face was 30% human and 70% wolf. His body also changed. In an instant, it expanded several times, and his 4 limbs turned into wolf arms. Black bristles grew all over his body, and they stood upright like sharp blades. The Sunlang City Lord had transformed from a human into a wolf in an instant. Or rather, it would be more accurate to call him a Leakin. The eyes of the forest wolf guard trembled at the sight of this. His expression was one of extreme shock. Clearly, he was frightened. Lu Yinshan was also dumbfounded. His mouth was wide open, but he couldn't make a sound. He never expected that the Sunlang City Lord would activate the Sunlang Curse Seal in order to capture Nie Tian. At the same time, Nie Tian, who was running at full speed in midair, suddenly sensed a terrifying evil aura approaching from behind. His expression flickered involuntarily. He turned around abruptly and saw a giant black wolf that was nearly 10 meters long charging towards him. His expression changed once again. The huge wolf released a terrifying dark power from its body, and it kept attacking the void like a small black mountain. Nyetion's eyes trembled slightly as he sensed the energy fluctuations in the air. He was extremely shocked. After the Sunlang City Lord turned into a Leakin, his strength skyrocketed dozens of times. What was more terrifying was that the huge wolf was extremely fast. It was like a black lightning bolt, charging at Nyetion.